The royal class was considered a special unit at the temple. The curriculum was aimed at raising talents in various fields for the benefit of the empire. Only real geniuses could get to this place, people with outstanding abilities and unlimited potential. The students here represented the elite of society. It was in this class, Class A, Reinhard was enlisted. No one could understand how he succeeded. Thanks to his hidden potential, Reinhard managed to get into a privileged class, although nothing of the kind happened before. He himself hardly realized how he ended up here. They looked at him with suspicion. No one suspected that he was the 17-year-old son of the king of demons, the burdened by the sins of his past life. In fact, he was 30, but he was forced to visit the academy again and fight for his life. He lived in a world doomed to death, among people who tried in every possible way to interfere with him. He had no other choice. To survive, he was obliged to become stronger. And in order to gain strength, he should have earned points of achievement. The most ironic was that he landed in the world, invented by himself, in his own unsuccessful romance. And just at this moment, the system reminded, now his task is to survive in this plot at all costs. It was a protracted war between demons and people that determined their fate. It began with a great clash of two races and ended with the death of King Demon's Valir from the sword of the hero of Arthur. With his death, the long-awaited world finally came. However, the Empire, exhausted by a heavy and long war, was forced to put tremendous efforts in the education of a new generation of heroes. The search for talents throughout the country began, which led to the creation of a special educational institution, the Academy, known as the Temple. It was in this place that the best of the best studied, and only geniuses could get to the royal class. Ludwig studied there, a young man with a hot disposition and a strong sense of justice. Despite his qualities, he was constantly among the lagging people. Meanwhile, the next issue of the novel ended in another world. Right was not easy. Everywhere, criticism, discontent, advice to quit this matter. The author was depressed. While he read the stream of hate, his heart could not stand it. An attack happened, and he died. He watched his lifeless body. A gloomy reaper named Kim explained his death came due to a sudden heart attack caused by a jump in pressure. She handed him a document to confirm his condition. The writer could not believe that he died, reading comments. But the fact remained a fact. Kim was annoyed by his questions. She had too many things. She said that he should urgently make a choice. Despite the shock, he had to admit death. It seemed to him one of the most ridiculous deaths. The Reaper explained that in order to get into paradise, you need to atone for your sins. In his case, the hardest was that he endlessly postponed the release of the continuation of the novel and wrote a frankly bad plot. He earned a little, barely made ends meet, but laid out the chapters irresponsibly. He even allowed himself to publish a short story from another account. At first he did not understand how a bad letter could be considered a sin. However, Kim explained, the case is not in a separate chapter or novel, but in a cumulative harm. He disappointed readers over and over again. The scale of the problem was much larger than he expected. Now he must atone for this sin. For each, the atonement took place in its own way, and his path was just beginning. After death, he was offered to choose one of the short stories he wrote in order to reborn in the body of one of her characters. There was one condition: to survive until the very end of the story, which greatly upset the guy. The Reaper explained that this is not the worst outcome yet. After all, unlike other souls, he will know the plot in advance, because he came up with it. From her point of view, it looked more like a reward than a punishment. But the writer himself thought differently, because most of his stories were gloomy and ended tragically. In the list of the short stories he completed, the following were The City of the Dead, The Story of the Zombie Apocalypse. he was sure that he would not live in this world and day. Survival in Ruins is a harsh drama about life after the end of the world. It was for her that he received a Hayat wave on the internet. And then there was no chance of survival. The hunter becomes a manager, a modern action where he would probably be a secondary character who is killed at the very beginning. The game becomes a reality, and I am just a cleaner. Fantasy in the spirit of dungeons, where 90% of humanity die. He almost had no doubt that he would become one of these 90%. All these short stories seemed to him a death sentence. The fifth story, The Death of the King of Demons, was more optimistic. It was a daily story about life at the academy after the end of the Great War. The chief antagonist was dying at the very beginning, and the plot was built on events after his death. It was because of this story that the author died. After all, a flurry of criticism fell upon it. But, paradoxically, it turned out to be the best option. He hoped to get the role of an ordinary student. The Reaper rushed him with a choice. She was ready to send him to the world of the city of the dead. The writer insisted on the death of the King of Demons. Reluctantly, but she agreed and wished him good luck. With one cotton, she moved him to the new world. He ended up in a medieval castle. Horns on the head, strange clothes. Everything indicated that it was not a dream. A status window appeared, and he found out with horror. He was reborn to Arquidamon Valley Jr., 17 years old, the son of the King of Demons. It was one of the worst options. The novel himself began with the death of the King of Demons, and now he is his son, who ended up at the epicenter of events. Right at that moment, explosions shook the castle. A new notice appeared. The prologue is activated. Mission: to escape from the castle of the King of Demons. He was frightened, seeing the dead body of the creature. The battle has already begun. Panic covered him. He had neither military skills nor allies. He fell at the time of the destruction of the castle into the body of a character which did not even exist in the original version of the novel. He became no one, the prince of the dying demonic kingdom. Blows poured on the castle. The building burst at the seams. He fled without stopping, cursing everything that was happening. The writer felt deceived. Didn't they promise that he would be in the short story with an advantage? Where is it? Instead, he ended up in the body of the son of the King of Demons, a character who did not exist in the original plot. He knew that this scene was a prologue. The castle would fall, and the heroes would destroy the demonic monarch. And he, like his son, is doomed. If he is seized, there will be no doubt in the outcome: execution. He tried to figure out how to survive. According to the status window, he had neither strength nor magical skills. Only knowledge of the local language was his weak consolation. If he got the role of the King of the Demons himself, then he would have a chance to escape or negotiations. But now all that remained for him is to run. He rushed into the castle's vault, hoping to find at least something useful. However, there were only piles of garbage. The reason why the army of demons and fell. Everything is useless. Until his gaze caught up for a magic book. He remembered. It was this book that he himself added to the short story, for characters without magical abilities. With trepidation, he flipped through the pages and found the teleportation spell. A ray of hope flashed in his eyes. Without hesitation, he activated him. But nothing happened. He was still standing in a crumbling castle. The system derived the message that the spell is cancelled. Panic covered him with her head. He had no time left. The only thing he could now beg for mercy. And then he remembered the reincarnation. This is a magic that allows you to take the appearance of another person. He had a plan: to change his appearance, get into prison under the guise of a prisoner, and then to escape with the prisoners when the Imperial army came. He activated magic, changed his appearance, and entered the dungeon. But inside, it was awaiting horror. The stink is rotten fish, with an admixture of iron. The guy felt that he had come for something soft. Having a look, he saw a human hand. In horror, he recoiled and fell. His hands were in the blood. The corpses were lying on the floor. Everywhere, piles of torn bodies. He never wrote this in his short story. It was supposed to be a romp at the academy, not a horror in the spirit of hell. He faced a choice, to run or pretend to be dead. The guy noticed an obscure figure in the distance. This meant that someone survived. Approaching, he saw a girl sitting near the woman's body. It became clear that she was still a child. Seeing him, she was scared. The boy tried not to scare her even more, explaining that he was also prisoner and did not pose a threat. He tried to find out whether she was in order, but the girl continued to be silent, not looking away from the dead body. The guy decided to calm her down and offered to wait for help together. However, he felt that he was too persistent and causes distrust. The boy admitted that he was also scared, because they were in the castle of the king of demons. Despite the tension, the girl suddenly spoke and invited him to sit next to him. He sat down. The situation remained awkward, but it was better than silence. It seemed to him that the girl considers him too calm, although in reality he was covered by fear. If his plan fails, he will be caught and killed. In the cloak pocket, he found the cookies found earlier in the pockets of the costume. He did not feel hunger, but suggested that the girl could be hungry, and offered her food. At first she hesitated, but still took the cookies, bite off very little. Perhaps she did not like such products or simply did not trust him to the end. He tried to encourage her, counting on the soon arrival of the Imperial Army. Soon, steps were heard in the corridor. A man entered the camera, accompanied by soldiers. Their reaction seemed strange to him until he understood. This man recognized the girl. The man kneeled down in front of her with relief and began to apologize for the fact that they could not save her before. So he found out that the girl is Charlotte d'Ardias, the first princess of the d'Ardias Empire. The system confirmed the completion of the prologue and charged him with the points of achievement. The flag of the Empire fluttered over the camp. The soldiers guarded them carefully. Saved with the princess turned out to be a strategically correct, but also an extremely dangerous decision. Now he was in a hopeless situation. His salvation was led by a man from the highest circles, and this only complicated the situation because he was a demon hiding under a low-rank spell. If someone applies the scattering magic, everything will end. The princess asked to take care of him, as he allegedly saved her. In addition, the girl was a character who did not exist in his original short story, which meant that the plot began to develop outside his control. She expressed gratitude and worried about him, promising to ensure his return home. However, to her question where he came from, he could not answer. Not a single name for the cities that he wrote in the short story surfaced in his head. Fortunately, the girl explained his confusion with a shock experienced and promised to help restore memory. The guy realized that he was just lucky that she was naive and kind. The servants have already received instructions to help him, and he understood that it was impossible to refuse now. He knew internally she could not keep his promise. Everything indicated that the girl would soon be killed. In the original story, there was neither her nor the details of her content in the Castle of Demons. This meant that its existence was generated by the system, and he knew nothing about her future. But there was Berthus, the character he created, and it became clear that with a real struggle for the throne between them, confrontation could begin. He thanked the princess again. The guy felt that she did not realize how many tests fate had prepared her. The young man felt an internal conflict. At heart, he would prefer a girl to die, and not himself, but such thoughts would cause him a disgust. The princess, despite her age, was just a child, and he considered it his duty to warn her of danger. Later, She referred to digestive problems and asked Lens to bring a doctor. He hesitated, because his duty was to defend the princess, but in the end he obeyed the order. As soon as he left the room, the girl's behavior changed dramatically. With cold confidence, she apologized to the guy, explaining that his death could be inevitable. The girl hinted that inside the camp almost all are her potential enemies. This also applied to her half-brother, Berthus, who, she believed, intends to kill her. He could arrange everything as if she had died in the castle of the King of Demons. According to her, both were planned to be liquidated without a trace. The guy asked if it was possible to rely on the knights, but she made it clear that even Lens did not cause her trust. Nevertheless, the girl assured that she would keep her promise to help him until he restores his memories. She had an escape plan. The princess was going to distract the attention of the guard so that the guy could perform the necessary actions. He did not understand why it was so important for her to entrust such an important mission to him, but he realized that their life depends on this. She said that Sir Francis was devoted to the royal family and can help them. The guy doubted whether it was possible to trust Francis, but the princess assured him that he had already proved his loyalty, saving their life. He realized that if it is really so, they have a chance. The boy was ready to fulfill any of her request. The princess decided to act and take on the role of the bait, distracting the attention of the knights while the guy will fulfill his task. She left the tent and announced the desire to inspect the barracks. The guard protested against such an idea. They were distracted, and this allowed the guy to leave the tent imperceptibly. He did not know where to look for Francis, but soon collided with a knight who told about his goal. He said that Francis had gone to the castle of the King of Demons on the orders of Sir Lens, the very one who was now guarding the princess. The guy realized that everything was adjusted in advance. The knight began to suspect him, but the guy managed to convince him of seriously the situation, mentioning the danger that threatens the princess. Suddenly, the knight believed him, explaining that he had experienced anxious forebodings since the departure of Francis. Moreover, Francis, before leaving, left a warning to be careful. The knight, who called Darius, suggested urgently advanced to search for him. He said that they would go on the road to his horses. On the way, the guy noticed how the soldiers pushing the demons in the cages. Dyer explained that these are captives captured during the recent war, and soon they were executed. The guy thought that if his plan had failed, he would be among them. They got to the war zone. Approaching, Dürer warned that they would have to dismount. People on the spot have already noticed their approach. The knight approached them and asked the question of their personality and the purpose of the visit. Darius introduced himself as a lieutenant of the 11th Battalion of the 3rd Platoon in the 1st Troops of the 4th Cavalry Regiment. He explained that the young man accompanying him should transmit an important message to Sir Francis. However, the knight said the sad news: Sir Francis died in battle with the remnants of the demon army. This information shocked the young man. He realized that Francis was trapped in order to eliminate as a threat. Probably behind this was Prince Berthus, who wanted to get rid of his combined sister Charlotte and clear the way to the throne. After that, Dürer suggested the young man to tell the truth about what was happening. Although the guy was not sure whether he could trust him, he decided to share all the information. He spoke about the threat hanging over the princess and about the role of Francis in her salvation. Hearing all this, Darius confirmed the guest that Francis was specially sent to certain death. He assured the young man that he would help him, because he himself was a knight of Francis. Together they went to the castle and penetrated the room where the young man had previously searched for a way to get out. There he found the scrolls of teleportation and a magic book, which surprised and alerted Darius. However, sudden steps violated their searches. Knights, faithful to the Duchy of Solarian, were nearby. This duchy supported Berthus, and the knights clearly wanted to eliminate everyone who could interfere with his elevation. Trying to avoid detection, Dürer and the young man hid, but were found. Dyer ordered the guy to hide behind him, preparing for the battle against 3 opponents. Meanwhile, the young man thought how he would like the Gargulya statue to come to life, as is the case in stories. Suddenly, the statue really set in motion and frightened the knights. Taking advantage of the moment, Dyrus grabbed the young man and they fled, leaving Gargulya to restrain the enemies. Together with Dyrus, they raced on a horse away from the castle. He could not understand how Gargulya came to life, but the young man did not give a clear explanation, referring to accident. I did not want to lie, but there was no choice. Behind them began the pursuit. There were many pursuers, and they were well armed. Using the spell, the young man accelerated the horse, but even at the same time, it was possible to break away only for a short while. Enemies shot from crossbows, approaching closer. Dyrer noted that magic does not act on the knights pursuing them. The young man knew the reason. These were elite fighters trained in the temple, and not to stop them with ordinary methods. He decided to use the bypass, to influence the knights themselves, but on their horses. Some of them were knocked down with magic, but it was not enough. Their own horse was tired, its speed fell. There was a threat to be overtaken. At that moment, demons came across the way, among whom was a goblin. The young man felt an unfamiliar power inside himself. One of the abilities of Archidemon Valir the Younger, called the power of the demon. This force was transmitted to the goblin, which, instead of attacking them, headed against the pursuers. Duros realized that they were lucky again, but began to suspect that the satellite had extraordinary abilities. Now, however, it was not the time to find out the truth. The most important thing was to save the princess. Upon arrival at the camp, the couple tried to break through to the princess, but her tent was guarded by the knights. Dürer was distracted by force, and the young man penetrated inside. He grabbed the princess and activated the scroll of teleportation, which transferred them to the capital of the Guardium Empire. The prologue successfully ended. The salvation of Charlotte de Ardias became a historical event that changed the future. They ended up in the capital. He carefully drawn the details of this city in his book and often dreamed of getting here. But in reality, the city was not what it imagined. Charlotte was scared, learning that Sir Francis was killed by enemies. Duros followed them using the second scroll of teleportation. The knight asked the guys if everything was all right with them. The princess turned to a man with the question of his personality. He introduced himself and said that he had to escort her to the palace. The group hit the road. On the way, the knight Dyrer in detail told the princess about everything that they had to do in order to save her. The young man, who was walking at the end of the detachment, listened carefully. The events described by the knight seemed implausible to him. Gargulya, who revived at a critical moment, unexpected help from the goblin, his own skill in using the motion scrolls. All this looked suspicious. He understood that the princess was not stupid, and sooner or later he would begin to ask questions. Therefore, I decided to disappear. The guy was behind the detachment, lost in the crowd, and was alone. Sitting on the street, he thought about how sorry he looked. He regretted that in the short story, he did not provide for the opportunity to eat mana to the demons. It was an omission. Suddenly, the system proposed the function of creating such an ability. This required experience points that could be earned by completing tasks. However, most quests seemed stupid and unrealistic to him. Among the abilities in the system, he also discovered the function of revision, the ability to adjust the parameters of the world. This made it possible to make changes in the course of events, but without the right to destroy the world itself. There was even a previewing option, but she also demanded points. Soon the system provided a new task, and a hint appeared on the screen to go to the shop. He went to the city's trading area, hoping to sell his scrolls. Bypassing the benches one after another, he offered his magic scrolls, hoping that this was the goal of the task. But the sellers refused. They considered scrolls a fake. In one of the shops, he was offered to redraw one of the scrolls for money. He knew that he would not be able. In addition, he did not want to endanger a man who subsequently could buy such a scroll. He refused and continued the search. Only one shop remained, and he entered it, cherishing the last hope. He was met by the seller, who immediately asked why he came. He said that he wanted to sell the scroll. She took one of them in her hands and instantly recognized the structure, a logical formula characteristic exclusively for demons. The girl tried to find out where he got such scrolls and why they were herself. At that moment, the guy realized that he was again in a dangerous situation, and possibly under the threat of exposure. He had to tell where these scrolls came from, and that he saved the princess. The girl doubted his sincerity, but still believed. She decided to help the young man and laid a spell of purification from the spell of oblivion. The guy tried to stop her, but he did not succeed. He again gained a true demonic form. The girl found out, recognized her master, and fell to his knees. She introduced herself as Ilaris, a member of the demonic group. Ilaris turned out to be a vampire introduced into the human city. She called other demons in the region, Sarkagar and Loyar. Ilaris hoped that now they would be able to revive demonic power in the capital. The young man, however, did not want a return to war and murders. The night came. Ilaris remained nearby, protecting him and guarding his dream. The guy was curious what a demon he was. Ilaris, without hesitation, replied that she was very good. He knew that it was a lie, but did not argue. He was curious where Ilaris was going to sleep. The girl replied that next to him. Previously, they did not talk about this. Despite all his fatigue from the new reality, he experienced light warmth from its presence. The night silence gave calm in this unexpected union of the demon and the vampire. The next day, along with Ilaris, they went to a meeting with the surviving demons. The crowd was gleeful. He understood their joy. The destruction of the king of demons finally brought the long-awaited world. In addition, the news spread that the princess is alive. The path brought them to the slums, a roster of poverty and despair. The guy did not expect to see anything else here. The person with whom they went to meet was the master of this place. The girl immediately smelled them by smell. She greeted Ilaris. Ilaris, in response, introduced the satellite, the new master of the demons, Walid Jr. She explained that he did not remember anything. All the memories disappeared, except for one. He was the son of the demon. The girl reported that she was only glad to do this. Valier the Younger did not treat her too well before. It remained only to wait for the Sarkagar, who was late. Suddenly they noticed him. He happily rushed to Wall and put him in a hug. The guy only hoped that he would be released more likely. He was not ready for such violent attention. Loyar hardly dragged Sarkagar to the side. He did not hide the hope that their new Vladika would revive the empire of demons. Valier admitted that he was not opposed, but he was just a guy without strength. However, Sarkagar did not agree. According to him, Valier was Archidemon. Then he asked who the archdemons are. Once upon a time, the demons fought among themselves a merciless war, until one who laid an end to her appeared. For this, he received the title of Archidemon, and his descendants inherited this title. The guy began to understand something, but still doubted that he was able to revive the empire. He considered it stupid to hide in the forests and hope for a miracle. Instead, he proposed to stay among people, study them, and strike from the inside. This idea came to Sarkagar to taste. He suggested Valier to enter the temple. Loyar supported the proposal. Finally, they were unanimous. Wall himself seemed to be madness. He hoped that Ilaris would convince them. But, to his surprise, she liked the idea. Then he admitted that he could not get lost among people. He stood out too much. Sarkagar offered him a Dreadfield ring, capable of changing his appearance. The decision was made. They went to the Daibun, who was supposed to make fake documents for Wall. The name had to be chosen in advance. There were many discussions, but in the end it stopped at Reinhard. The name sounded like the main character. Lawyer explained to the manufacturer that they want to enter the guy into ordinary life. He agreed that the idea is sound, but asked a practical question. How are they going to pay for his training? Alas, no one thought about this. Daibun said that they don't have enough money to pay for training. Lawyer immediately asked if there were other options. There is clearly not enough income from their business. Reinhard understood. Training at the academy cost fabulous money. Among her students were only children from noble families. If you count the cost for the currency of his native world, about $100,000 came out. Obviously, neither Loyar nor Daibun had such funds. They began to frantically reflect on how to get out of the situation. Reinhard offered a compromise, to pay at least the first semester. He hoped that, having got into the temple, he could reveal the strength in himself and then switch to a free form of training. In this regard, there was a rational grain. But even such an amount was unbearable for his friends. Their goods were not sold, there were fewer customers, and business suffered losses. Then Reinhard offered a new idea, to use a man train. They could sell toys right on the way, earning on children's desires. Parents rarely refused their children. The plan turned out to be so simple and effective that the Daibun was delighted. In the evening, they drank beer together, and the man praised the guy, adding that his sister sees great potential in him. He promised to do everything so that Reinhard entered the academy. But Reinhard himself suspected that Lawyer had an additional income not related to the sale of toys. He carefully asked Daibun about this, but he only stupidly said nothing. Their conversation was interrupted by Lawyer herself. She dispersed the drinking and took Reinhard to his room. There, she strictly explained that such behavior could lead to consequences. The guy apologized and promised to be more careful. He decided to ask her a direct question about her earnings. The girl reluctantly admitted that some of her people work as spies, collecting information for the right people. She did not disclose more details and warned, as soon as he enters the temple, he will have to forget about all this. Realizing that the conversation was exhausted, the guy went to bed. In the morning, he and Daibun went to draw up documents. Everything turned out to be much easier than he expected. Along the way, they passed by the receiving point of the temple. Daibun suggested looking. Inside, there was a lot of applicants. Approaching the rack, they asked the girl whether it was possible to pay for training only for the first semester. The answer turned out to be disappointing. The reception for partial payment was no longer carried out. Daibun's face was overshadowed, but he did not give up and asked if Reinhard's abilities could be tested. The guy himself was sure that he did not have them and tried to dissuade his friend. But he decided to try all possible ways. The girl offered to touch the magic ball. Reinhard agreed. He was not afraid that the ball would reveal him like a demon. In extreme cases, he could use the Dreadfield ring to hide. He touched the ball. Some strange reaction occurred, and the girl frowned. She left after another ball, deciding that the first was faulty. Reinhard did not expect anything from it. He knew that he had no gift and considered the idea to be meaningless, but he refused to give up. When the girl returned with a new ball, she explained that she had checked him. Everything should work. Reinhard again touched the sphere, and again surprise appeared on her face. The girl was confused. She whispered that it was impossible. Daibun demanded an explanation. It turned out that the result of the scan was potential. This is not a talent, but a fairly high indicator to achieve a lot with proper efforts. She added that they usually voice such results to applicants. This is the policy of the temple. However, now the result was special. Potential for everything. Reinhard did not believe his eyes. The world opened before him in a new light. They met with Loyar and discussed the results of the audit. Daibun shone with joy. Among them was a genius. He enthusiastically repeated that he knew. An unusual power was hidden in Reinhard, but Reinhard himself did not share their enthusiasm. He felt anxiety. The world opened all the ways to him. He could become anyone, a magician, a swordsman, an archer. All that is needed is achievements, and if he earns them, he will be able to find any talent. This gift, unlimited potential, frightened it. Daibun noticed his detachment. Reinhard assured that everything was in order, although in fact it was another load on his shoulders. He knew, now he may have to study not in a regular group, but in the royal class, the elite group of the Academy of the Temple. These students lived in the apartments, received a scholarship, had access to any classes, and were considered the greatest hopes of the empire. Alaris was delighted, but Reinhard himself, no. When she asked that he was staring, he did not find what to answer. Indeed, in this very class, the protagonist of his short story, The Death of the King of Demons, Ludwig, should soon appear. Reinhard knew Ludwig hated this class for their arrogance and ridicule. But in the course of the plot, everything changed. He came closer to his classmates and became part of their team. He considered the only plus that he knew all the future villains of this class. It was his trump card. Alaris assured that they would support him. He did not understand why she, with such stubbornness, wanted him to study in the temple. Perhaps, if he really becomes powerful, as Sarkagar wants, he can change his mind and untie a new war. But Alaris believed in the opposite. If he spends enough time among people, she would stop hating them. And if everything goes differently, they will figure it out along the way. In parting, she handed him new clothes and a pendant. Clothing is to study, and the pendant is something more. She recalled that her nickname, Tuesday. That is how she introduced herself when they first met. Alaris explained that vampires once had 7 clans, 7 nights. Monday and Sunday clans disappeared, and their magic also left with them. The rest continued to develop their elements, transmitting knowledge from generation to generation. The pendant she handed him was a symbol of Tuesday Flame, the treasure of her clan. When he asked if she was the leader of the clan, Alaris answered evasively, but the essence was clear. She trusted him with strength. Just as Sarkagar gave the ring, she handed him a kind of artifact. The pendant allowed the use of fiery magic. The girl invited him to use her. Reinhard doubted that he could handle it. He tried. A small flash of flame broke out of his palm. Alaris warned, "The power of the pendant grows depending on enmity to the goal. The deeper the hatred, the brighter the flame." He understood why she did it. She tried to protect him. He thanked and promised to use magic only in extreme cases. She was pleased with such a promise. Loyar handed him the money, his allowance. She did not have artifacts, but she wanted to help at least something. Reinhard promised not to spend them in vain. In parting, she wished him good night and reminded him not to sleep in the classroom on the first day. He assured her that not a child. But when the young man was left alone, thoughts defeated him again. He remembered one important detail. The Death of the King of Demons was written in the genre of everyday life. He wanted to please the fans, tired of the tragedies, to write something bright and warm. But he could not end stories happily. He ruined everything. Readers fell asleep again with anger. The young man remembered how, in the middle of the history of the gate to other worlds, opened the path of monsters. The invasion began. The world plunged into the fire and suffering. Everything burned in the abyss of pain. Reinhard sighed heavily. He hated himself for being such a fool, and wrote it all. He frantically thought what to do next. The idea came to mind to hide and wait out these events, but he was responsible for what was happening. There were people who did not deserve such a participation. Reinhard decided not to be an any more coward and enter the academy to earn enough points. With their help, he was going to change the future of this world or fight for it. The temple was striking in its grandeur. A huge building with luxurious architecture and interior decoration caused admiration. Reinhard could not even believe that he once described all this himself. Reality surpassed the most daring fantasies. The scale, details, atmosphere, everything looked like the construction of noble wealth was spent. Entering the spacious lobby, he felt confusion, not knowing where to go. The girl met him. She introduced herself. Her name was Sarah Van Owen. She was the head of the hostel. Sarah helped him navigate and indicated in which direction his room was located. The door opened with a map, and an incredibly spacious and luxurious room appeared before him. The level of convenience and sophistication was striking. Everything, from furniture to light, spoke of the high status of her tenant. Inside, he found a box, a welcome gift for beginners. In it lay a light snack, notebook, and pen. There was time left before the welcoming ceremony, and he decided to use it with benefit. He lay down and began to recall the characters of his short story, recording those whom he could restore in his memory. The list came out unexpectedly short, which was alarmed. His voice from the loudspeaker distracted him. A solemn meeting began. Arriving at the hall, he was among many students. Many were unfamiliar to him. High school students were upstairs. Their presence seemed strange, because in his history they did not participate in such events. By accident, having encountered one of the students, he fell. The guy who helped him get up was Ludwig, the very main character of his work. Only at that moment Reinhard realized to the end that he was inside the world he created. Everything that used to exist only in his imagination was now a reality. The dating ceremony began. A-class students submitted alternately. Bertus Dacardius was the first to introduce. In the original version of events, he studied at the academy under a fictional name. Behind him is a girl named Henry. In addition, there were 11 students, not 10, as planned originally. He was superfluous, Reinhard. This confirmed, the plot began to change. When the line of Class B came, the girl was the first to speak, which he did not expect to see here. He recognized her, but at the same time clearly understood that he had not created such a character. In his history, it did not exist. Her name was Charlotte Dacardius. This name sounded like something impossible. The temple was not obeyed by the external structures of power. This was emphasized by the fact that in the royal class, in addition to Bertus and Charlotte, there was not a single representative of the imperial family. Even members of the dynasty could not come here without the proper level of talent. The fact that Bertus and Charlotte were accepted in the first year of training clearly indicated a deviation from the original plot. For Bertus, the end of the temple was to be a jerk of power. Having received an education here, he could significantly strengthen his influence and get closer to the throne. Initially, in the short story, Reinhard wrote that Bertus hid his real name. But now the story has gone differently. Even the author no longer knew what would happen next. He began to fear because, according to the plot, Bertus was supposed to arouse 3 key abilities: combat skills, sensitivity to magic, and mana control. The Duke Solarian provided the young man with resources, and the Empire allocated mentors to make him candidate number 1. Without one of these abilities, the path to the hero's title would be closed to him. Subsequently, Bertus was supposed to become the greatest master of the sword throughout the Empire. However, Reinhard hoped that the discrepancies with the original history would not be catastrophic. At that moment, he was more worried about the first princess, Charlotte Dacardius. He could not assume that she would be in the royal class, and even in the B class under the first number. This made me think about whether it meant that it was inferior to Bertus in level, since I did not get into the A class. Although Bertus himself was also not an absolute leader, and his skills did not guarantee A1 place. The idea that both could be in the same class aroused the alarm in Reinhard. He did not envy the teachers who were to work with them. After the dating ceremony, Serera moved to the rules. In the temple, everyone is equal, regardless of origin. The only formal separation is that classes A and B, Pressure through the status are prohibited and punishable up to the exception. Then she read out a letter from the imperial palace. Any threat of Charlotte de Cardias will entail a deprivation of the right to the throne. This concerned her, and Berthus, and their supporters. The emperor demanded honest rivalry, and not the struggle for power. Reinhard noticed how Berthus started a conversation with Erich. The formation of unions began. Then he turned to Ellen Artoria. The girl was supposed to be A1 in the classroom. Also, her brother was a hero who defeated the king of demons. While everyone was busy Berthus, Reinhard collided with Ludwig. He offered to have fun, and Reinhard agreed. They were noticed by Henrietta, who showed hostility to Ludwig. Berthus neighed their skirmish, reproaching the girl for sharpness. The atmosphere of the evening became tense. The first conflicts and alliances began. Berthus quickly conquered sympathy, refuting rumors about himself. Reinhard, watching from the side, noticed that he received glasses, perhaps because he witnessed Ludwig's conviction. But the prices of new talents were so high that it seemed almost impossible to accumulate them. Reinhard switched to the window of super resistance. They cost less, but he could not afford them yet. Meanwhile, the students were given a schedule and explained the rules. The royal class gathered for the lesson. The class teacher, Mr. Eppenhuser, appointed A1 responsible for communication with teachers. In case of serious violations, like fights, it was possible to contact directly. Reinhard, the 11th on the list, was called to the office. The teacher explained to the guy that he did not have a clear talent, unlike others. At the same time, he has the potential, but the path is not defined. When asked what he wants to do, Reinhard chose superpowers rather because of accessibility than desire. The answer was surprised by the teacher. Typically, such classes are available only to students with talent, but exceptions to the royal class were acting. However, without the progress of Reinhard, they could expel from the course. Mr. Eppenhauser approved the choice of one discipline and issued a schedule. He advised the young man not to limit himself only to superpowers. Reinhard thanked him, realizing that the teacher was much kinder than expected. Returning to the class, Reinhard noticed that they were stared at him. Interest was connected with the spreading hearing about his uselessness. One of the students sarcastically hinted that he had no talents and questioned his place in the royal class. Reinhard restrained himself, reminding him that a commission had accepted him here. The guy did not lag behind, and over time Reinhard's wrath prevailed. He quickly put the offender in place. This did not go unnoticed. Berthus watched him with interest. At dinner, glances continued to pursue him. He has an image of an aggressive guy. In the physical education lesson, the teacher demanded from the entire maximum result. Reinhard began to lag. He was overtaken by Ellen, demonstrating an excellent shape. Charlotte watched from the rostrum. She was not yet allowed to classes. In the locker room, Kyer again provoked Reinhard into conflict. His audacity and statements brought the guy to rage. Reinhard hit the guy in response. A fight started. Participants quickly spread their comrades. Soon they both ended up in the office of Mr. Eppenhauser. The teacher demanded an explanation. The enemy accused Reinhard, claiming that he was the first to insult him. Reinhard confirmed that he really started a fight, but added that this was not unfounded. When the teacher asked for an explanation, Reinhard said that the Students' Act defended the honor of the temple. He explained that he questioned the honesty of the admission commission, actually accusing her of corruption. These words touched the teacher, for whom devotion to the temple and the empire was the principle. As a result, the Eppenhauser released Reinhard back into the class, leaving Kyer for an additional conversation. Returning, Reinhard noticed the gaze of classmates. When Mr. Eppenhauser entered the class, it became clear that the conversation with Kyer gave the desired effect. He no longer molested. Calling the students to calm, the teacher asked them to complete the test. After a tense day, everyone was allowed to leave the temple. Despite fatigue, many took advantage of the chance to rest. Reinhard became a witness. As in the corridor, Eric pushed the red-haired girl. It was Scarlet, the one whose fate he knew well. She was often oppressed by the color of the hair that once symbolizes valor, and now the fear of demons. Ludwig helped her rise. Scarlet was an outcast, and even in the temple her position did not change. Later, lying on the bed, Reinhard opened the status and noticed among the new skill available, self-hypnosis. Previously, he intentionally did not include him in the script, considering it too cheat. The ability could reprogram the mind, but now it was sealed and inaccessible. The glasses have already been spent, and the skill could be awakened only in exceptional conditions. He felt deceived, because there were already enough trials in his life. To get new glasses, he studied tasks. One thing, to write a love letter with subsequent refusal, gave only 100 points. Another, to achieve recognition of love, offered 1,000. This could solve his problem. He began to build a plan. On the main street of the training complex, cafes and core were located. There was a relaxed atmosphere. In one of the institutions, the students discussed Reinhard. His outbreak of rage rallied them. Conversations switched to girls. At that moment, an unknown girl unexpectedly approached one of the students. She handed him a note and offered to leave. The note contained a declaration of love. The girl was interested in whether he was free. The guy replied that he was not meeting with anyone and accepted an invitation to a date. His friends were in shock. No one understood why he got the attention. Later, Reinhard changed. Women's clothing was dropped. He was disgusted with himself. He felt as if he had sold his soul in exchange for 1,000 points of achievement. But formally, the task was completed. Now, however, a new mark has appeared in the task window. The following tasks can only be performed in the Reinhard body. The next task caused him an internal protest: to go on a date with Canolan, continuing to portray the girl. The remaining tasks were even worse: to write a love letter to a classmate and get a refusal. It was painful, but he understood. There was no choice. He decided. To minimize the risks, he chose a goal with a cold, indifferent disposition. It was his classmate Ellen Artoria, A2. Helene focusedly honed the blows with a wooden sword, completely immersed in training. At that moment, Reinhard approached her and, without saying a word, handed the envelope. She turned it around, glorified her eyes through the contents, and gave it back. He just nodded, silently took the letter, and left. The task was completed. The refusal was received. The points of achievement are accrued. However, the next day the situation only aggravated. He was embarrassed, and he hoped that he could avoid meetings with Helen at least in the classroom. But the theory, to his misfortune, took place with them jointly, and the practice immediately followed it. Engagement in swords. Helen demonstrated excellent equipment. Her movements were honed and confident. On the contrary, Reinhard could barely hold the sword in his hands. The instructors looked at each other. They obviously did not see in him either a combat spirit or a class corresponding to the level of the royal line. To clarify the situation, it was decided to arrange an indicative sparring between him and Helen. He squeezed the hilt of the sword with all his might, but did not even have time to come to his senses, how she had already disappeared from the field of view. In the next instant, her wooden sword hit him exactly along the neck. He woke up already in the infirmary. Helen sat nearby. She looked worried and immediately began to apologize. She was sincerely sorry. She did not know that he could not fight. By that time, dinner had come. Reinhard tried to get up. Helen immediately rushed to his aid. Then he invited her to have lunch together. The girl agreed. He decided that the time had come for little revenge. Reinhard took her into a specific institution where he ordered something called the dead soup. The dish looked and smelled of disgusting. Helen, embarrassed, hesitated, but Reinhard convinced her that it was unusually tasty. He watched with a secret triumph how it gained courage and takes a sip. Her face grimaced. The girl tried to understand why this dish exists at all and who eats it. Nevertheless, Helen finished everything to the last spoon, and only at the end she promised that she would never touch such a dish again. The next lesson after lunch was the theory of magic. The teacher brought complex formulas on the board and explained the basics of magical modeling. Reinhard, everything seemed to be a meaningless pile of symbols. He felt that he was losing time, and, without waiting for the end of the lesson, quietly left the class. The next lesson, the practice of susceptibility to magic, turned out to be much more pleasant. He fell asleep under the soothing voice of the instructor. Waking up, he noticed that everyone else was also asleep. Apparently, this was the secret of the popularity of these classes. Then there was a lesson in the control of superpowers. Already from the threshold, the teacher began roll call, and Reinhard suddenly heard a familiar name, Charlotte. Soon, practical classes began. The teacher praised Liana, noting her exceptional control over his abilities. Reinhard noticed how Charlotte left the lesson with the instructor. He became interested. Why does she train separately? There were two explanations. Either her rare abilities awakened, or she entered the academy, formally declaring talents that she actually did not have. He thought if Bertus knew about this. The instructor asked what he would like to do. He asked him to bring him to the limit. She was surprised. Then he explained that he needed to fall into a state of threat of life. This is the only way to arouse the ability that still slept. The instructor categorically refused. However, she allowed him to continue to attend classes. When the lesson ended, one of the students approached him in the corridor. He was irritated by the fact that Reinhard attends classes to control superpowers, while not possessing abilities as such. He calmly explained that he was walking just for this, to arouse them. The guy warned Reinhard that he would fry him as soon as he saw in the lesson next time. Reinhard's hidden anger flashed. Offended to the depths of the soul, the classmate activated the flame. Reinhard immediately hit him on his cheek. An angry guy rushed at him, but received a second blow. Reinhard did not restrain himself, explained that it was self-defense. He threatened to pull the guy's eyes if he reaches him again. When the time of dinner came, he noticed that the students did not take his eyes off him. Rumors about his skirmish scattered around the academy, and now they began to be afraid. Bertus approached him. He wanted to talk. The prince invited Reinhard to a personal conversation. He immediately decided to clarify the situation. According to him, this meeting was not initiated by him. The comrades asked Bertus to deal with those who keep everyone in fear. Bertus also set out the point of view of the rest. Most are sure that Reinhard either comes from the royal family or has some kind of secret powerful origin. That is why, in their opinion, he behaves so self-confident and defiantly without fear of consequences. Reinhard only grinned for this and assured that everything was not so. Bertus did not look surprised. He noticed that he himself did not consider him a prince or nobleman. Suddenly Bertus asked the question whether he loves the empire. The answer was affirmative. Then Bertus asked, "Why?" Reinhard, without hesitation, said that he likes the money. In this world, they gave freedom, the opportunity to live and not deny themselves anything. Bertus, contrary to expectations, smiled and admitted that he liked such a position. He asked Reinhard to be careful. Do not run into conflicts unnecessarily. Such examination demanded the ability to get along with others, and with this, he had difficulties. Bertus said that they will still have a more serious conversation ahead. But until he is convinced of the reliability of Reinhard, this topic will remain closed. He left, leaving Reinhard alone with his thoughts. This guy, Bertus, really scared him with his insight and confidence. A few days have passed after the conversation with Bertus. Reinhard did not seek to change his behavior in order for classmates to begin to perceive him differently. Absolutely everyone avoided him, with the exception of Ludwig. A week of training has passed. He decided to visit old friends and share his impressions. Going to Loyar, he heard from her a question regarding rumors that representatives of royal blood were studying at the academy. He confirmed that this year the prince and princess are really here. Reinhard asked her to find out anything about Charlotte's abilities. She promised to help, but also warned it is not worth contacting Elleris or Sarkagar, followed by observation. So far, only classmates followed him, and this was not a danger. But another time, the consequences could be much more serious. Reinhard blamed himself for not noticing surveillance. Returning to the academy, he ran into Kerr and Eric. They began to ulcerate, claiming that he was not just a commoner but a homeless person. He did not deny, he admitted that it was. But when the boarders crossed the mockery, he grabbed one by the collar and with a threat reminded that the homeless had nothing to lose. He also warned the second, if they once again follow him, the consequences will be painful. Both guys were scared and retreated. Now, rumors about Reinhard have acquired an even more gloomy shade. They began to be afraid of him. He returned to the room and lay on the bed. He was not too concerned about the conversation that he was a homeless and crazy. It was much more important to unlock the superpowers. Suddenly, they knocked on the door. Reinhard opened with irritation, waiting for another provocation. But Ellen was on the threshold. She reported that they were called for training. In the gym, everyone was already squeezed. Ellen immediately joined the guys. Reinhard remained standing. The girl tried to give him an instruction, demanding submission. However, her pressure did not impress him. Such an attitude brought her to rabies. The high school student tried to force Reinhard to push up, but he ignored her instructions. He considered her too weak to order her like him. In his eyes, she looked nothing more than a frightened girl, and he openly made it clear that he did not intend to obey. The girl was confused by his insolence and eventually retreated. Reinhard, remaining in the hall, said that the time of the end has already come, and therefore he would go to his room. He was surprised to note that the rest still remain on the floor. When he asked the reason, the guys explained, "Such training is a tradition." This year was followed by students of Class A of noble origin, and this task was entrusted to the girl he pushed away. Henrietta went to Reinhard and asked who would be responsible for the consequences of his trick. She was afraid that high school students would hide the grudge and began to take revenge. Reinhard did not see the threat. In his opinion, if they begin to pester, you can always turn to the teachers. The girl accused him of selfishness and threatened him that if she had to leave the temple because of him, she would kill him. Reinhard suffered no threats and began a dispute. At that moment, high school students entered the hall. The girl, offended by Reinhard, led them along. One of them asked who insulted her. The conversation began with attempts to clarify the name and origin of Reinhard. He was mistaken for a representative of the nobility or even a member of the imperial family. He dispelled all the guesses, saying that he was a simple student. The high school student was outraged that someone without a high status dared to obscure traditions. He hit Reinhard, trying to put in place. Reinhard was not going to endure this. Despite the blows received, he grabbed the opponent by a weak place, threatening to tear off the genitals if anyone approached. The screams of pain spread around the hall. The rest retreated, frightened by his fury. He demanded that everyone get out with the victim. The girl, which caused the conflict, screamed in rage, calling him crazy. Soon, Adrian turned to Reinhard and asked to behave more noble, recalling that he was also a student. She was a second-year student and explained that she did not approve of the methods that her comrades were forced to resort to. Adriana warned Reinhard that such behavior could turn into serious problems in the future. In response, he noticed that if third-classers want to intimidate, then let them personally come. He will be happy to see how they will try to subjugate Berthus. Berthus did not like that his name was used, although Reinhard tried to justify himself, claiming that he had no evil intent. He asked what would happen if on Monday the guys would still accept the call. Reinhard replied that it would be funny to see how they would try to fulfill their threats. He was sure that everything would turn on the contrary. But Berthus had already begun to be annoyed, which made Reinhard be nervous. He even thought to use the ring to escape. However, the situation unexpectedly turned into a business channel. Since Reinhard took advantage of Berthus, now Bertus will use his services. He instructed Reinhard to follow Charlotte, with whom he sometimes intersected in the lessons. Reinhard had no way out, he agreed. Then Bertus asked how he communicates with classmates. Reinhard replied that even saved them. But Berthus recalled that, calling Henrietta a imbecilka, he hardly earned respect. Reinhard realized that the girl had already managed to press Berthus. Seeing the girl again, he once again called her. Henrietta flared up with rage. Reinhard said that he just really likes her. Like a sweet, capricious girl. His words left her in confusion. She did not understand what had just happened. On Monday, the guy approached Reinhard and stated that he had undermined the honor of Art and Gartis, the heir to a famous family. The call was officially issued to a duel, with the right to choose time and place. An observer was provided. Reinhard did not understand why everything went so far, because it was the enemy that hit the first. He was offered to recognize the defeat or fight honestly to prove his strength. To the surprise all, he accepted the challenge. He was warned that Art is a second year of Class A, which means that Reinhard has no chance. However, he was not going to apologize. He believed that if it was destined to get a blow, so be it. But his decision to participate in a duel was dictated not by madness, but by the desire to activate his only ability, self-hypnosis. He hoped that a stressful situation would help him do it. The system confirmed that the next important event will be a duel with Art. The chances of winning were low, but even the defeat gave glasses. Reinhard felt that the result was already a foregone conclusion, but the reward would be in any case. The duel was appointed 2 weeks later in the training room of the hostel of Class A. Mr. Eppenhuser was appointed as an observer, who formed the consent of both parties. All students already knew about the duel. There was nowhere to wait for help. Physical education training was difficult. Reinhard felt weak. During one of these training, the girl stopped him and handed over a piece of paper. He asked that this was, and realized that Charlotte also conceived something. On the note, it was written that he stayed in the classroom after class. He obeyed and stayed, wondering why she needed it. This was to be their first conversation after the events in the castle of the King of Demons. When she entered, she immediately ordered him to shut up. She knew who he was. Charlotte told Reinhard that she knew about his connection with the bandits. She conducted her own investigation, although she could not accurately find out its origin. According to her, she found out that the gang of Circles hires former robbers into her ranks. Her knowledge and insight seemed almost limitless. She did not let Reinhard make excuses and stated that soon the guard would begin to clean the environs of the capital. Then she gave him a task, to find a child from a portrait. He is alive or dead. The portrait was Reinhard himself. Charlotte believed that he was a poor student who joined the clan, the best suited for this case. She instructed him to regularly report on the progress of the investigation and warned, if he tries to hide something, she will destroy him with his own hands. Her request sounded sincerely, as a request to find a person close to her. Reinhard realized that he should be careful. The disclosure of the truth could harm not only him, but also Charlotte. Later, Henrietta approached him and said with irony that she had heard about his duel with a high school student. She mockingly added that he would definitely get it. Reinhard did not argue. He understood that he could not only lose, but also die. Henrietta was surprised why he then agreed. He replied that yes, he was scared, but he was ready for this. The girl said that he would definitely come to see how he would be beaten. Reinhard invited her. He had already begun to tune in to the upcoming duel, which was a week later. He understood. If he does not begin to act, he will simply be destroyed before he has time to arouse his abilities. Reinhard decided that he should immediately start training with a sword. He began to observe the exemplary students, Klipman and Helen, who worked out the blows for days on end. They were closed and did not even communicate with each other, so it was not worth counting on their help. Reinhard began to train alone, trying to remember everything that he was taught. The first attempts were unsuccessful. He missed, fell, and his hands were covered with corns. He did not understand how others withstand such loads, but he understood, one way or another, he should become stronger. Later, a girl came to him who brought a message from Regina. She tearfully asked Adriana to dissuade Reinhard from participating in a duel. The girl seemed to him sweet, and he regretted that he told her rudeness before. Adriana directly asked what a plan he had. She believed that in 2 weeks it was impossible to prepare for a battle with Art. The only way out is to apologize to cancel the battle. Reinhard replied that Arta did not think bad, simply believes that he should go through this test. Adriana did not understand what he had in mind. Then she took the sword and began to show him movements. Her technique was honed. She invited Reinhard to repeat after her. At first he did not succeed, but when she saw that he was painful, she helped him. The girl removed painful corns, healing his hands with the help of her ability. Adriana invited him to the morning training in the lobby of the hostel. The next morning, although Reinhard was very tired, he got up earlier than usual and came to training. Adrian suggested starting with a run to stretch the muscles. He barely managed after her, almost suffocated, but she insisted that he needed a strong body and endurance for survival and struggle. Training lasted 3 hours. Running, exercises, work with a sword. When Reinhard fell from fatigue, the girl supported him with divine force. She also advised to eat more and more often so that the body could cope with the loads. Reinhard first doubted, believing that the fatigue is moral, not physical. After training, he nevertheless went to the royal class kitchen to have a bite. There he met Helen, another permanent visitor to the kitchen, who, as he noticed, constantly eats a lot due to heavy training. Reinhard prepared a fried egg with a bacon and suggested that Helen try. She ate dried beef, which he considered tasteless. Helen quickly ate almost all the food and explained that she was very hungry. Reinhard was surprised at her appetite, and even joked that she was eating like a hungry boar. He expected that after a joint lesson she would treat him to dinner. In his room, he watched that the body has not changed much yet, but the indicators, for example the number of mana, had grown a little. He understood that there was little time left before the battle, and it was necessary to arouse the skill of self-hypnosis as soon as possible. Reinhard was seriously configured. Important events were coming: a duel, relations with Bertus and Charlotte, the opening of the gate, and he did not have time for mistakes. Lunchtime has come. Helen came to the meeting and, as usual, began eagerly eating everything in a row. Reinhard was surprised to watch her. Despite her brutal appetite, there was something amazing in her. He did not expect that she would come, but, having heard that the next time she would be treated, thought, it turns out, their date will happen again? After lunch, he returned to the room. Thoughts about the upcoming disaster haunted. He felt helpless, but understood. You need to get together and do everything possible to prevent trouble. Later, he again went to training, and after it, exhausted and hungry, went to the dining room. There he met Helen again. Now she enthusiastically ate sausages. There was almost no other food left. Everything that could be taken was already lying on her tray. The girl explained that she was just too lazy to cook. Reinhard had no strength to argue or cook, and he stated that now she would do whatever he would say. He gave her a knife and ordered her to cut meat. Surprisingly, Helene dexterously coped with him. He even praised her. The possession of the knife was no worse than that of the chef. Reinhard grinned. If she becomes a cook, then he will achieve much. Then he instructed her to cut carrots, add rice, and stir. The food was ready. She looked mediocre, but she smelled beautifully. He ordered her to remember the recipe and cook it next time on his own. Helen, of course, said that she was too lazy. He understood that there is no other answer. The girl began to eat, despite the fact that the food was still too hot, and in the end burned her tongue. The guy quickly brought her a glass of cold water, which Helen drank in one gulp. Reinhard admitted, "Hot food is much better than a dry." Helen, in turn, said that she had cooked everything. He recalled that it was he who gave the teams, but she continued to argue. In the end, Helen reluctantly agreed. They did it together. He had nothing to object. Tired, he returned to his room. There he was waiting for an unexpected guest. A maid who suddenly turned to him with the words, "Your Highness." She bowed, and Reinhard recognized Sarkagar in her amazement. He did not understand how he got into his room, but Sarkagar assured that it was not difficult. Sarkagar came to talk about the forces of the princess, about which Reinhard was previously interested in. According to him, various rumors went in the palace, but no one doubted that the princess had abilities. There was a risk that someone from Berthus's entourage could learn the truth through a cool curator or teacher responsible for the training of the princess. Reinhard asked what kind of threat he had in mind. Sarkagar suggested disguise and try to find out more information about her forces. Reinhard agreed that the situation is difficult. Perhaps she herself is afraid of her strength or does not want to be known about her. He began to understand how serious everything is. The conversation between them has become deeper. Reinhard felt that everything was reduced to the princess again. He told a friend, "She is looking for him." And the Sarkagar was surprised at this. Sarkagar noted that the stay in the temple of the master was very dangerous. Charlotte began his search, and this meant that she would not be so just behind. Reinhard turned out to be between two lights, between his sister and brother. He realized that he would be useful until he continues to bring information to the prince and fulfill the assignments of the princess. In order not to become a burden, he had to please both and maintain interest. He understood that in the event of the slightest suspicion of betrayal, both would show cruelty. The situation was difficult, but he tried to think positively. Given the characters of Berthus and Charlotte, everything could be much worse. Ultimately, he was in a position when he could manipulate both. Sarkar admired the wisdom of his master. After another exhausting training, Adrian praised Reinhard, offering to relax a little before the next step. He asked why the girl does not use divine power in her own interests. Adriana explained that she considers such an increase unnatural, as from an awakening potion, which can ultimately kill. Strength restores the body, but does not make up for nutrients. That is why she insisted that he eat well after training. Reinhard realized divine power is just a stimulant. During training, he noticed Ludwig. Lanian and Dolphin were also with him. According to the scenario, Ludwig was supposed to play the role of a participant in all school conflicts, but now he remained in the shadow. He later headed to the dining room, where Helen reported that she would cook today. She decided to cook stew beef, a dish that she often ate at home. When asked if she prepared him before, the girl answered negatively. While she was cooking, Reinhard did not miss the opportunity to push her, especially when she gained salt. However, the dish turned out to be edible. When he joked that she would eat the whole pan, Helen only confirmed this. Reinhard admitted that he was glad to enter the temple. He explained that she looks like to ruin her family with one trip to the kitchen. Helen admitted that she came here not of her own free will. She was sent under duress. When asked if her brother would have angry, she answered negatively, but Reinhard did not believe it. They later moved to training with swords. The guy realized that the girl was not angry. Helen asked him to repeat movements, as if revenge for past bullying. The girl studied different techniques and methods of attack, and Reinhard realized that she was already far ahead of his classmates. Exhausted, he fell. Friday came. There were 2 days left before the duel. Helen demonstrated an unexpected technique. She hit the sword in his hands and reminded that fencing was useless without weapons itself. She said that the training was aimed at strengthening the strength of the grip, which was weak for Reinhard. The girl suggested repeating the same exercise to the duel. Never let the sword let out of her hands. He trained for so long that he lost time. At some point, the sword cracked and scattered into pieces. Reinhard went after the new. Following this, Helen stated that he would lose. He himself knew it. Then she asked if he wanted to win, and said that there was only one way to do it. Reinhard spent morning in training with Adriana, but thoughts about Helen's words did not leave him. She said that he has a chance to win, but she did not reveal the details, only hinting, "Think about what a fight is." This question tormented him, but he could not find an answer. In an attempt to understand, he asked Adriana if he had a chance to win. She honestly admitted she does not know the chances of small, and she does not know other ways. Reinhard reconciled. Loss for him was not a shame. Returning to his room, he opened the interface of characteristics. The indicators grew a little, but it was the merit of exhausting training with Adrian and Helen. Military skills, however, remained the same. Time has come. He dressed and went to a duel, ready to meet his fear of face-to-face. Crowds of students gathered at the arena, almost all the first-year-olds and part of the elders. Henrietta did not fail to sarcastically notice that he would be ackled today, which Reinhard did not surprise him at all. Before the fight, the class teacher read out the official foundation of the duel. According to the record, Art de Gretus accused Reinhard of insulting honor. This phrase caused an explosion of laughter among the audience. Further, the document stated that Art experienced mental pain and sexual humiliation, demanded apologies, and called Reinhard to a duel. When the mentor invited the parties to voice their conditions, the Art demanded that Reinhard his knees and swear in eternal respect for the elders. He refused. He was not going to apologize to everyone, the maximum of Art. Then the teacher suggested identifying duelists. Art solemnly stated that his champion would be a third-year student, Mean. Reinhard did not immediately understand what he had in mind. Only when Meaton himself came out, it dawned on him. It was about a duel with an experienced fighter, called up instead of a real duelist. Then Reinhard recalled, Helen also offered to become his champion. It was, perhaps, the only way to win. He saw that Adrian was also ready to stand up for him. He had two allies, ready to fight. The class teacher reminded of the conditions. If one of the parties is surrendered or the outcome becomes clear, the duel ends. Metan, on the other hand, made a proposal. The battle will end only after the defeat of one of the parties is announced. The teacher specified with Reinhard if he agrees. He nodded, but then put forward his condition. He, as an official duelist, requires a handicap for the enemy. He did not call the champion. The audience froze. The girls were shocked. The teacher approved. Metan is forbidden to use his left hand. Reinhard, thanks to training with Helen, knew a hand that does not hold a sword plays a decisive role. The duel began. Reinhard attacked the first, rapidly, while the Metan was careless. But the blow was easily reflected. The enemy's strength shocked him. He almost dropped his sword. Mean only grinned mockingly. He attacked in response, but Reinhard hardly stopped the blow. It became clear to him why Helen instructed him to strengthen the grip. A new blow threw him aside. Mean reminded the guy what would happen if he misses the sword. He demanded that the enemy get up and continue the battle. Reinhard hardly reflected the blows. Frightened glances were turned on him from all sides. The fear of girls was tangible even through the noise of the crowd. Mean demanded that Reinhard surrender, but he was not going to lower his head. He even intended to turn into an act. One last blow, and let it be all. He rushed to the attack. At this moment, all the internal reserves flashed in it. He activated existing skills. His strength, even if not as bright and destructive as that of the strongest fighters of the school, was special. The attack, and the enemy's sword cracked, scattered into pieces. Mean was left without weapons. Reinhard did not allow himself to hesitate and inflicted an accurate blow. But consciousness did not leave a third-year fighter. He was not going to lose. Reinhard tried to figure out how to complete the battle. His breathing was shot down. Each movement spoke with pain. But inside, there was one thought: to win. Do not survive, do not surprise, namely, to win. And then, when Maton moved on him again, he remembered all that Helen taught him, all that his own mind said. Its strength is not external pressure, not a response to stress. This is self-hypnosis. This is faith, not in a sword, not in receptions, in itself. He understood how he activated it, not at the time of fear, but at the time of the decision. At that moment, when he wanted to not just survive, but to win, power woke up. The students in the hall believed that everything was already decided. But Reinhard raised his sword and struck. For the first time, Maton realized that he was losing an advantage. He did not understand how Reinhard managed to hold on. With each blow, it became only stronger, as if drawing energy from despair itself. His strength grew, and now nothing restrained his rage. Reinhard stood over the enemy, demanding recognition of defeat. He wanted Min to openly admit his mistake, that he had underestimated the enemy. All students around were shocked by what was happening. It was difficult for them to realize that a freshman was able to defeat an older student, and even such as Maton. A stressed pause came, but still the Maton broke. He recognized his defeat, albeit reluctantly. Reinhard was officially declared the winner. The last thing he managed to hear before falling into an unconscious state was someone's frightened scream. He woke up already in the hospital. The whole body hurt, as if a tank had passed over it. Adrian sat at his bed. She told him that he had won. He immediately thought about Maton, and she confirmed that he was also here. Then she asked the main question: why did Reinhard allow her to intervene? She was ready to stand up for him at any moment, but he did everything himself. Her suspicions were confirmed. Reinhard deliberately endonated himself in order to arouse his strength on the verge of death. For him, it was an unjustified risk. The result was worth it. But Adrian was a different opinion. She considered his act reckless and stupid, and demanded that he do not do that anymore. He thanked her for his help and for support. Adrian made it clear that she appreciates those who are able to get along with others, and not those who have to be interceded. After several days, he was released in the rehabilitation chamber. Teachers conducted a restoration treatment and then followed a consultation with Dr. Eppenhuser. He noted that the power of self-hypnosis, which Reinhard possessed, is extremely rare and potentially dangerous. He also confirmed that the guy still has unsolved abilities that can be awakened, but was anticipated from rash actions. From this moment, the use of abilities in battle outside of official duels was strictly prohibited for Reinhard. He agreed. He understood that his strength was unique, and he himself is now under the sight. The Eppenhauser seemed strange to him, but good-natured. He even imagined how surprised Mrs. Rolanders if he had learned about his hidden possibilities. When Reinhard returned to the corridors of the academy, he felt a change. The students whispered behind their backs. The eyes were wary or full of respect. The duel became the #1 theme in the royal class. No one discussed how exactly he defeated, only the fact that he won. Even those who hated him had now looked differently. Perhaps with respect. Perhaps with fear. He walked along the corridor and suddenly saw Henrietta. She passed by as if she had not noticed him. It was unusual. Usually, she did not miss the opportunity to quarrel. Reinhard called her, calling her a familiar nickname. She turned around. Anger flashed in her eyes. Her aversion to his strength was obvious. Henrietta despised him, believing that he won cowardly. But at that moment, Reinhard realized that fear was hiding behind her anger. He remembered how she stood then, frightened, unable to intervene and help him. The guy came closer, grabbed her cheeks. She tried to hit him, but the tears had already come to the eye. Her voice trembled. She did not understand why he constantly clings to her. She did nothing to him. Henrietta sobbed. Reinhard tried to calm her down, said something comforting, but she did not react. Everything that was happening resembled a situation when older people bring the child to tears with excessive affection. He realized that he went over the stick and tried to apologize, but Henrietta continued to cry. She was offended because of constant ridicule and insults. Through tears, she repeated that even relatives, her parents and brothers, never treated her like that. She accused him of the absence of elementary manners and could not understand why this was happening precisely with her. Reinhard objected. After all, she teased him, calling the poverty. However, the girl stood on her own. In her opinion, this was not a mockery, but only a statement of fact. He explained that he did not want to offend her at all. She just seemed too sweet to him, and he could not restrain himself. Even at the very beginning, he told her that she was sweet, and did not understand why she took it so painful. But Henrietta cited as an example how he pinched her and laughed. Reinhard naively explained that she became even nicer from this. Henrietta asked me not to touch her. Reinhard nodded, apologized, and handed her the cake, hoping that it would comfort her a little. They stood silently nearby. A minute later, Henrietta carefully asked if he was hurt in a duel. Reinhard admitted that the pain was unbearable, to the desire to die. The girl reasonably noticed that he could just give up. He was lucky that his strength woke up. Without this, he would be a cripple. Reinhard replied that all his life he was not sweet. He was used to retreating, but this time he decided not to allow himself to lose such a scum. His opponent simply wanted to arrange a beating as a show, and it was humiliating. Henrietta restrainedly remarked, "If he continues in the same spirit, the temple will become a real hell for him." Berthus approached him and praised Reinhard. In his opinion, the victory was outstanding. Reinhard replied that he was just lucky, and his strength awakened. Art also unexpectedly apologized for his behavior. He recognized the defeat and promised henceforth not to present unreasonable requirements. Reinhard recalled the words of Adriana. Art, perhaps, was not so bad. Probably he himself was trapped, forced to obey older students. Reinhard realized that many did not act on their own, and Regina, who was forced to punish the younger ones, and he himself when he went against the whole system. Now he better realized the feelings of Art, albeit too late. He also apologized, admitting that he went too far. Art was surprised but accepted. Reinhard realized another apology awaits him ahead, in front of Regina. Later, the class teacher said that next week a festival of improvements begins, dedicated to victory over demons. The temple will be closed for a month, but the training schedule allowed to rest only 5 days. The students rejoiced, because these were 5 days of freedom. Reinhard secretly hoped to meet Ilaris. However, the teacher unexpectedly announced to him that he was removed from today's lesson and asked to be released. Reinhard did not understand what was the matter, but went out. He and the class teacher sat on a bench on the street and watched the pool. Reinhard thought out loud. It would be nice to fill it with hot water and swim even in winter. The teacher skeptically noticed that no one would want to splash through the same water all year round, and the costs would be huge. When asked why he spoke about this, Reinhard honestly answered, "It was just interesting." Then the teacher jokingly hinted at whether this was connected with the desire to look at the girls in swimsuits. Reinhard was at a loss. He did not think about it at all. When he asked again, the teacher suddenly got up and left. As it turned out, to greet the teacher, Rolandria. She, responsible for the superpowers, reacted to the awakening of Reinhard's power with admiration. Such a case was for her for the first time. The teacher announced that today will be more like a test. The task took him only 8 seconds. It was faster than usual. The effect of self-hypnosis was obvious. She explained that suggestion is a rare ability in which faith in success really affects reality. The stronger Vera, the more powerful the result is. The problem was that a person should sincerely believe. Theoretically, you can achieve anything, even that the father becomes a king. Reinhard thought. Rolandria asked why he was quiet. He admitted that he was not feeling at ease. The teacher tried to encourage him. His abilities are unique, and their possession is exceptional. According to her, he was gifted by nature. But Reinhard himself did not know whether to rejoice. Everything seemed strange and fake. The test ended. The night came. Reinhard could not fall asleep. Everything that was happening reminded him of the nonsense of an 8th grader with a mania of greatness. Thoughts were confused. And suddenly the phone rang. Someone asked him to go to the main lobby. It was Charlotte. She urgently needed to talk to him. On the street, Charlotte told Reinhard that she knew about his awakened power and asked to find a boy who once saved her life. Doubting himself, Reinhard nevertheless agreed to depict a clairvoyant, touched by her seriousness. He pretended to use power and said that the boy was riding, fleeing the chase. Charlotte burst into tears. It was only important for her to know if he was alive. Reinhard confirmed this, supporting the illusion. She asked not to talk about this to Bertus, fearing that he would take advantage of this against her. The boy, according to her, helped her survive in a nightmare when she was on the verge of madness. He did not know anything about himself, and Charlotte vowed to help him remember. Reinhard wondered whether it was worth returning the guy's memory. Perhaps oblivion was his salvation. Charlotte did not agree, but did not argue. She just wanted the boy to find peace. In response, Charlotte promised to do everything possible for Reinhard. The young man obscured her. Such oaths can be dangerous. They parted around the rooms. On the way, Bertus stopped him. He knew that his sister was looking for someone and made it clear that they were watching Reinhard. He admitted that he received a request to find a boy, but does not even know his name. Bertus also led the search and asked to inform if Reinhard finds the target. Suddenly, the prince mentioned the Guild of Thieves and invited Reinhard to think about the post of her master as a possible tool for influence. It alarmed the guy. So far, the proposal remained only hypothetical. The festival began, the students went home. Adrian was interested in his plans, but he was going to train. Thoughts about Bertus's proposal did not let him go during training. Reinhard could not concentrate. He left Ellen to train alone and advised him to rest. Suddenly, the young man felt an alarm for her and decided to bring her a snack. Reinhard discovered Ellen unconscious in the hall. Ellen recalled how, being a little, she begged her brother not to leave for battle. She did not want him to leave her. The girl woke up. Next to her was Reinhard. The nurse confirmed that he brought her on himself and all the time called a doctor. Ellen explained that she had grown out and her body could not stand the load. She explained that she fell during training, hitting her head. Reinhard was worried about a possible concussion, but assured that he healed it with a spell. He offered to eat together. Ellen wanted to take a shower first. A friend warned that they could be caught during the end and offered to eat in her room. Reinhard examined Ellen's room, simple, but with training equipment. She was no different from his own. There was a suitcase in the corner, which aroused interest in him. When Ellen returned, he said that he was tired and offered to eat faster. During the meal, she unexpectedly asked if he would sacrifice himself for the sake of saving the world. Reinhard realized, for Ellen, death is just the end. Even if for the sake of saving the world, this is just one life. People honored Artorius. But after his death, Ellen was left alone and the whole world was blamed. He did not know what to answer and said that everything would become clear only in such a situation. Ellen firmly stated that she was just not going to die. Then she went to the suitcase and showed a sword with the inscription, "Sprinkled with tears." Reinhard immediately recognized him. It was a Ramant, one of the 2 legendary swords of the hero of Artorius. The sword of the goddess of the moon Mensis, lost in history, was now lying in the suitcase of a simple girl who lost his brother. Before his death, Artorias gave him Ellen. The girl thanked Reinhard for saving her life. The system reported the achievement of Ellen's sincerity was obtained. In the morning, he packed things and went to the shop. Elleris was surprised to see him. She asked why he came here, because it would be safer to stay in the temple. He replied that he had come here because Elleris was here. Reinhard asked her things. The girl reminded him that before coming to this place, he went to other shops to sell the scroll. He did not understand what was the essence of her message. She said that the last place where he was seen was destroyed. Elleris reported that one of the merchants charged against Reinhard, claiming that he had stolen a scroll from him. The young man himself denied this, assuring that he had not committed any thefts. According to him, the scroll was given to him voluntarily, although later it turned out that it was a fake. The merchant proposed a reward for an attempt to reproduce a document. Elleris could not understand why someone to take such a risk. The conversation turned briefly in the other direction. Reinhard asked how things are with Loyar and the rest. It turned out that they had not been contacted for a long time. Then he suggested visiting them the next morning. The night went uneasily. Reinhard could not fall asleep, and Elleris was sitting by the window. In silence, she reflected on people, about their greed, a tendency to violence and petty strait. She did not believe that human nature could be kinder than demonic. These thoughts oppressed her, and, noticing this, Reinhard promised to ask her in the morning. The next day they arrived at Loyar and Sarkagar. The latter was glad to meet, especially having learned that Reinhard finally aroused the strength in himself. Loyar, on the contrary, showed anxiety. She asked what it was like to live in the temple and immediately indicated that Reinhard should behave more restrained. The Sarkagar, on the contrary, rejoiced at the young man's battle spirit and was proud of the achievements of the team, despite the protests of Loyar. He noticed that he did not even use the amulet in battle, which was even more upset by Elleris. She believed that the guy was just lucky. Reinhard translated the conversation to Elleris's hint of yesterday. He asked the others to tell what they hid. It was evident from their faces. Something happened. Sarkaiger admitted that during the celebration of the victory, they heard about the sale of captured demons in the black market. This struck Reinhard. He was sure that all demons were executed after the war. He did not understand why to sell the remaining because holding them like collection exhibits seemed monstrous. In particular demand, according to Sarkagar, the succubi, demonitsa, outwardly similar to people, but dangerous of their ability to draw out vitality. To save them from this line, surgical intervention was carried out over them. The same concerned incubus. Until that moment, Reinhard believed that only elite demons survived. Now he realized the captives were turned into slaves and toys. The intention of friends was obvious. They were going to save those who still remained in captivity. Sarkaiger understood how risky it was, because if at least one of them perishes or is captured, this will become a disaster. Now, on the side of Reinhard, there were only 3 of his friends. Elleris agreed with them, but she also believed that without him, their chances were insignificant. Now everything was different. All events have shifted, and it was Reinhard who became the one on whom the future depended. But he doubted? He was not a hero. He was not a demon. He was just a loser who fell into a foreign world. He did not know why to risk his life for the sake of others. And even more so, I did not understand why to restore the demonic kingdom, to sacrifice yourself for the sake of someone else's pain. It was not about him. Elleris apologized for drawing him into this situation. Everything became worse than you could imagine. But Reinhard believed that fatigue is the cause of all troubles. Mistakes are born from it, and powerlessness from lack of sleep. Elleris did not understand what he was driving at until he said that he just wanted to sleep. And what? He agrees to try to help them. Sincere surprise reflected on the faces of friends. Despite everything, he was ready to take a chance and try to save the demons. Perhaps he still began to change. Alaris believed that before taking a rescue operation, it was necessary to find out three key points. They needed to know exactly where the black market is located, how many prisoners are contained inside, and how many security are involved. The location of the market was kept in the strictest confidence. Only the elected approxim this information knew this information. The Sarkar had the necessary connections, so he took up intelligence. It was impossible to get into the territory without a special invitation, but no one knew how to get it. At first, the guard was not taken seriously, mistakenly believing that it would not become a serious obstacle. However, the very fact that so many captives managed to bring to the market indicated the presence of a patron with high powers. Reinhard suggested that what was happening could be known at the very top. He wondered if his companions tried to ask the detachment commander. If the military, related to the aristocrats, stood behind the abductions, then the matter could reach until the emperor himself. Moreover, there was a threat that the Yard was involved in this directly. Bertus and Charlotte were probably already guessing about it. Reinhard realized they will not cope with such a conspiracy. Behind all this stood two powerful figures, and the market protection was probably the corresponding level. The more he reflected on penetration, the clearer it became. There is practically no chance of success. Even if it was possible to break inside, it remained open, where to put the liberates. Everything seemed almost hopeless. Alaris suggested that there would be magicians capable of supporting a barrier equal in terms of its own strength. This only complicated the task. Reinhard began to torment doubts. Perhaps the plan was doomed from the very beginning. Gradually, they came to the conclusion that acting on the day of the opening of the market is the worst decision. It is much more profitable to attack before or after the end of the auction. 2, because the barrier has not yet been activated. After, because the attention of the security will be scattered, which will simplify the evacuation. The richest and influential people of the empire gathered at the auction. Each of them had to pay considerable amounts only for the right to attend. Knowing the list of participants could help in planning. After the release of the captives, they will need shelter and protection, which should also be thought about in advance. Reinhard understood. If the operation is successful, the capital will be covered by chaos. People learn that demons were kept right in the heart of the empire. This will become interested in the temple, a religious structure with independent power and special influence. He also realized that if he does not intervene, someone else would do it. Everything has long been moving towards the denouement. It is only part of the general flow. The risk was huge. The ideal plan still did not exist. The only chance could be mass teleportation. Reinhard offered to use the magic Alaris. She agreed, but warned that the preparation of the ritual would take at least half an hour. In the afternoon, she could transfer about 20 creatures, at night, up to 50. Given the size of the demons, the number of teleported ones was reduced. Even if everything goes perfectly, everyone will not be able to withdraw, but at least part of the prisoners can be saved. And that would already be a victory. He could not help but think about the main thing. The very idea of the existence of such a market was criminal. Demon trade is strictly prohibited, and everything that was happening was carefully hidden from the public. Reinhard offered a non-standard step to hit the organizers with information. It was enough to spread rumors about the upcoming auction. People who suffered from the war could not be silent. Their anger would flare up instantly, and the authorities could not ignore the protest. The army will try to intervene by disguising its agents under civilian ones. But the most important thing is that religion will enter into business. Demon trade contradicted their dogmas. The Knights of Faith, not obeying the emperor, can declare this a betrayal. This will put the throne under attack and cause a political storm. The conflict with the temple will lead to a civil war, and the market will be forced to close. The sacred knights who have passed the war will not tolerate cooperation with creatures whom they considered enemies all their lives. Sarkagar expressed doubt. If the temple intervenes, All demons are simply executed. Reinhard understood that such an outcome is real, but he also knew that, first of all, the Holy Knights would direct a blow to power. And at the moment, when everyone is busy with a political crisis, there will be the only chance to hold salvation. If there are too many captives and Reinhard manages to free them all, it will still be impossible to avoid losses. Some will not survive flights. That is why Loyar suggested using the gate, an ancient structure that was near the temple. If you arrange a rebellion and distract the guard, the group will be able to get to the gate. At this moment, Elaris, with the help of magic, will transfer the pursuers, knights, to another place, leaving prisoners outside of reach. This plan, despite numerous variables, inspired hope. For the first time, they had the feeling that the operation may have a real chance of success. Reinhard understood. If nothing happens, he will have to use his strength, no matter what costs. Everyone took their role. Loyar volunteered to raise a rebellion. Elaris, to restrain the knights. Sarkagar has already begun operation, disguising him in custody in order to act from the inside. The night came, and they returned to the Elaris shop. There she expressed gratitude to Reinhard for agreeing to help, despite the risk. He asked how she feels, but she replied that her condition does not matter. The main thing is that the innocent, whether knights or demons, would not suffer. She admitted that in her life she took away a lot of lives and was tired of it. Elaris no longer wanted to be the cause of anyone's death. He covered her, and soon they fell asleep. Meanwhile, the capital was preparing for the holiday of victory over demons, and this meant that the day of salvation of demons came. The streets were filled with jubilant people. The group found out that the captives are held in the building of the Guild of Merchants. The goal was not the exposure of the aristocrats standing behind this, namely, the salvation of the prisoners. They had to act quickly before the auction. According to information from Sarkagar and Loyar, about 100 demons were in captivity. Thus, the operation turned not just into salvation, but into the disclosure of the true origin of the black market. They had two possible paths, but not one gave a guaranteed result. Luck could smile only once. To increase the chances, they sent a letter to the Holy Knights. Fortunately, their request was not unanswered. When the operation began, the group approached the guild, hiding under the magic of invisibility. They came close to one of the most protected places in the capital and remained unnoticed. Only those who owned the art of detection, but apparently there were no hazard, were nearby. Loyar felt an increase in the smell of holy knights. This meant that they received their message and began movement. All the attention of the knights was directed to the city center. They approached the guild and stated that they have information about the illegal trade in demons. The guard was stunned. The Holy Knights promised that if they were wrong, they would apologize. However, they insisted on voluntary cooperation. The group watched what was happening. Under the pressure of the authority and confidence of the saints, the guard retreated, freeing the entrance. Loyar was the first to notice this. The Holy Knights rushed deep into the guild. It is time for Reinhard to act. He understood. If he does not intervene, knights can execute the captives in place, considering them a danger. This could not be allowed. Reinhard tried to activate the review function in order to control what was happening, but it still remained inaccessible. The reason remained unclear, and this caused concern. Reinhard still could not activate the review function. It only remained to hope that the conceived plan would work, and the Holy Knights would not decide to destroy the captives. He did not have a spare option. If they do not show mercy, the demons will die. The system did not react in any way, not allowing the course of events. Elaris, noticing that he turned pale, asked what happened. Reinhard assured her that everything is under control, and the plan was valid. A little time passed, and they saw the knights withdraw demons from the building. All captives were alive. Not only the group sighed in relief, but also Reinhard himself. So far, everything was going well. However, the situation began to change quickly. The knights were talking among themselves. They obviously did not want someone to learn about demons. From their words it became clear. The captives were going to secretly eliminate, so as not to sow panic among the townspeople. It was obvious that the saints were also somehow involved in the black market. Although their motives remained incomprehensible, the group had to act immediately. There was no time to think. They rushed towards the gate, hoping to get ahead of the knights. However, they were soon discovered. They realized that they were hiding near someone and gave the order to seize strangers. For seconds they decided everything. Reinhard shouted Alaris to immediately activate the teleportation spell. The girl, without delay, called the flame. The languages of fire with indomitable rage burst outward, covering everything around. The knights were stunned. They did not expect such a wild, uncontrolled spell. The flame was approaching from all sides, burning everything in the way. Reinhard watched what was happening anxiously. Alaris did not seem to try to restrain destruction. He began to fear that in rage she could destroy the demons themselves, along with enemies. It was clear that this girl could not be angry. Meanwhile, the knights quickly came to their senses and began to prepare for battle. But before they managed to strike, something went wrong. It became clear that they had more enemies than expected. Alaris took advantage of the opportunity, gave the order to the prisoners to flee to the gates. The demons rushed forward. The knights tried to stop the fugitives, appealed to Ares, the god of war, begging to give them victory. They quickly adapted to the changed atmosphere. Reinhard understood. Despite the power of Lawyer and Alaris, together they will not be able to restrain the onslaught. The situation could get out of control at any second. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard. Even the knights froze in confusion. Something seemed from the raging fire. A huge, monstrous creature that carried primitive horror in itself. Until that moment, none of them knew that the Sarkagar was able to turn into a dragon. It was thanks to this hidden force that the group managed to break out of the environment of the knights. All saved remained alive. Not a single demon was injured. In a safe place, Reinhard decided to turn to the demons on behalf of Valier the Younger, the son of the deceased king of demons. He wanted to strengthen their spirit and give confidence, posing for someone they can admit. Among the liberates was Irie, the third princess of demons. The girl's face did not cause him memories. Later, left alone with her, he admitted that he did not remember his former life. Irie only sighed, noticing that it was even for the better. In the past, enmity reigned between them, constant rivalry and tense skirmishes. Reinhard admitted that perhaps he was cruel and unfair, and asked her forgiveness, even if he did not remember the details. The girl, broken and tired, considered herself useless in further struggle. After the captivity, her horns and tail were cut off from her. For the demon it meant to lose all strength, to become an empty shell. Irie could not hold back tears. She felt that neither her race nor herself was needed. Reinhard reassured her. He did not save them to force them to serve. His goal was different, to give them freedom. Now everyone is free to decide where he wants to live and which way to choose. After this conversation, the group divided. 10 demons wished to stay in the capital. The rest went to their native lands. Reinhard thought why some of them made just such a decision. Among the remaining was Irie. She explained that she could no longer return to the previous life of a demonic princess. However, her experience and communications could be useful in another, in the struggle for power and influence, right here in the capital. She suggested using her capabilities to help Reinhard to strengthen in the world of people. But her next words shocked him. Irie proposed to sell the remaining demons into slavery, not as a betrayal, but as a deal, a temporary sacrifice for the sake of money and future ambitions. For her, it was a pragmatic step, a way to give the group a chance for a new life within the framework of the system. Reinhard covered the rage. He did not save them for this. Not for that he risked, then to let them be in chains again, albeit voluntarily. Irie insisted. Her value now was only the opportunity to benefit, even if at the cost of her own freedom. She was sure that, having sold herself and other demons in slavery, she would be able to earn enough funds for the revival of the demonic empire. Reinhard refused. He did not need such money received at the cost of life and the dignity of the creatures saved by him. Nevertheless, Eerie did not give up, and her supporters supported this proposal, asking Reinhard to at least think about him. He remained adamant. The released were not a bargaining coin for him. The young man did not understand how it was possible to abandon the freedom for which he fought with such ease. Eerie only repeated again that she did not see values in herself and does not know how to be useful. Reinhard urged them to think about another way of earning. Soon, he remembered that it was not worth expecting strategic revelations from them. Sometimes they acted stupidly and straightforwardly. He invited them to go to the port city to start a new life and transfer information to him about the situation in the region. It was a safer way, and Irie agreed. She promised that they would cope with this task. The group broke up with this decision, but there was no time to rest. The situation in the capital was aggravated. Reinhard had to urgently return to the temple. The students were announced that the vacation was over, and leaving the school is now strictly prohibited. The reason was the attack of demons on the holy nights. The city swept panic. The tongues of flame flashed through the night sky, violating the usual course of things. The festival, which was supposed to last almost a month, was rolled up in a matter of days. Reinhard knew that these events developed on his initiative. For his intervention in the course of history, he received a rare reward: inverted festival table, symbolizing the change in the storyline. Meanwhile, conversations did not subside at school. The students were afraid that the presence of demons in the capital was a sign that the war was not over. Anxiety increased. Even the plan of kidnapping the dolphin of one of the students was torn due to the latest events. In the next training session, Helen asked the question about demons. She was embarrassed why they fought against the Holy Knights. Reinhard dodged a direct answer, claiming that he did not know. Helen thought, if someone wanted to take revenge and get to the capital, would he attack the most protected place? She believed that behind this there is something more, something that everyone has not yet known. Reinhard noted to himself, Helen was an ordinary girl free from bias. Her reasoning inspired hope. He understood that the truth would pop up sooner or later and the secrets would reveal. However, inside he felt heaviness. His name was now connected with the demons, and he understood that he was deprived of the right to be called a person. And yet, he did not feel like a demon. Thoughts got confused. Who is he really? There were no answers, and maybe now there was not the moment to search for them. Helen asked to continue training, but Reinhard suggested something else. He grabbed the girl's hand and dragged him. Walk. He did not wait for objections, promising that he would treat her. Ellen admitted that she does not like soy sauce. Reinhard was surprised, because before she ate him without complaints. The girl replied that there was simply no other choice. Hunger was stronger than preferences. Now she wanted meat, and she did not miss the chance to get enough. She ate so many steaks that even Reinhard, who had seen a lot, was amazing. He joked that she had a black hole in her stomach. When lunch came to an end, he recalled that she was now treated with dessert. They headed for the next cafe, but along the way they noticed how Regina trains in archery, trying to get into the target. Reinhard could not pass by without prying the girl. His comments angered Regina. She said that she wanted to win a huge plush hippo, but for this it was necessary to score a maximum of points. Reinhard decided to try the power of self-hypnosis and help the girl in this, but was able to win only a small toy. Regina was disappointed and wondered why he generally considers himself better. He explained that all this was for the sake of a joke, but he promised to try again. Now seriously. Without specifying the details, he handed over to the bow of Ellen. The girl shot and won the prize without any words. Her accuracy surprised everyone. She modestly admitted that she had already shot a little, but Reinhard realized in front of him is a real natural archon. They gave the toy to Regina, who was delighted. She even called Ellen the best. Reinhard recalled that if not for him, she could not shoot. He paid. Regina maliciously noticed that he shot worse than her and generally looked sorry. In response, Reinhard took a hippo from her, which caused a storm of indignation. The dispute continued on dessert in a cafe. Reinhard admitted that he did not like black sweet tea, but came for them. Both girls were sweet-toothed. He apologized to Regina for his behavior. She admitted that she did not have hatred for him, but sincerely hates an older student from the third year of study. It was he who entrusted her to care for the first days, not asking her desires. The conversation switched to more personal topics. It turned out that Regina was only 15, which made her younger than most freshmen. Reinhard was amazed. He did not understand how such a young girl was able to enter the temple. He asked what was her specialization. Regina replied that she was studying magic, and in particular, she owns fire. Reinhard considered this superpowers, but she explained that in their world it is just magic, and everyone theoretically can learn how to do the same. She said that in the temple her name is Silence, because she is able to use high-level magic without spells and preparation. This made it clear its abilities go beyond the usual. Reinhard was surprised before he did not write about this. Regina admitted that she is a student of the second year. The rank of A1 is the first in her generation. The girl said that even in the temple no one had come across this form of magic before. Her ability was new for everyone, without spells, without preparation. But there was a problem. Her supply of mana was limited, because of which she could not use magic at full force. Reinhard already managed to notice. The matter was not in the volume of mana, but in the ability to use it. He believed that Regina simply did not reveal her potential. The girl doubtfully asked if he really believes in it. Reinhard confidently replied that this is the basis of psychology. Restrictions are more often sitting in their heads. After the dessert, the three of them went back to the educational institution. The road passed along the same street where the festive parade was no recently noisy. Now the atmosphere seemed oppressive, as if the world has since moved from the usual axis. Regina suddenly asked if they believe that the king of demons is really alive, and is now preparing the revival of his kingdom. Reinhard did not answer directly. He noticed that he himself does not believe, but everything is possible. These words alarmed the girl. She was scared. Who will protect them now if the great hero Arturius is dead? Ellen listened silently, with sadness in her eyes. This conversation was painful for her. When they got to the gates of the educational institution, they said goodbye to Regina, giving it a plush toy. Only two remained, Reinhard and Ellen. Climbing the steps, he almost left when Ellen called him. She asked if he believes that the king of demons is alive. Reinhard did not know what to say. After all, if everything is confirmed, then it is on Ellen that a terrible burden will fall. She was the hero of the hero. The power of Arthur flowed in her veins, and it is on her that mankind will lay its last hopes. The problem was that Ellen did not want to die for others, just as he, the heir to the king of demons, did not want to become a new monarch. Two heirs, each of whom abandoned his role. It was a dilemma of a new era. Reinhard hoped that the world had not yet been doomed, that Ellen will remain safe. He really worried about her fate. After all, having changed the course of the story, he launched a chain of events whose completion no longer knew. Those who were dear to him, Charlotte and Ellen, have now become a threat. Everything went not according to the script. Understanding this, Reinhard decided to intervene. He was going to return everything under control and direct the story to where he could be himself again. Mr. Eppenhauser came to the students with an official statement. In connection with the attack of demons on the capital, the students of the temple were given a choice. If someone considered the school unsafe, he could take a vacation and go home. Those who decided to stay were forbidden to leave the territory of the temple until a special order. Henrietta immediately asked if they could continue their studies who returned from vacation. The class teacher without hesitation said, "In case of departure, they will have to start the entire semester from the beginning." Reinhard watched the reaction of students. The panic, running around the hall from the word demons alone, was too obvious. He understood. It cannot be allowed that key figures simply run away. Until recently, Ludwig held the center of attention. He had to defend Scarlet, stand behind her by a mountain. But in a new denouement, Charlotte intercepted this role. It was the princess who stood between the girl and the danger, violating the original line of events. Everything went not according to plan. The main character took up a secondary role. Reinhard went to Adelia. He asked without ceremonies where the Imbitian was located, so he called Henrietta in his hearts. The girl was scared. She knew that it was better not to argue with this guy. He could be dangerous. Nevertheless, she replied, Henrietta said that she had an important meeting with her father. Reinhard immediately realized that if she went to her parents, it means she was somewhere nearby. When Adelia tried to leave, he stopped her and specified whether Henrietta filed a vacation application. The answer was affirmative. Then he asked, what will happen to her if Henrietta really leaves? The girl quietly admitted that she would like her to stay. On the proposal of Reinhard to convince her friend, she replied that it was almost impossible to change the decision of the Duke of Owen. Even looking into his eyes was scared. She could not understand why Reinhard was so important in general that Henrietta remained. After all, every time they met, quarrels were inevitable. However, she joked that maybe he just liked Henrietta, and at that moment, Henrietta herself appeared. Seeing Reinhard in her room, she became furious as a mess reigned around. Blinking with anger, the girl tried to push him out the door. He did not understand what caused such a reaction again. Why is she crying? What did he do this time? They still managed to talk, already outside the room. He directly asked if she was going to take a vacation. She evasively replied that this would be a good solution, at least not to see him for a whole year. Reinhard suddenly asked her to stay. Henrietta was confused. Why does he ask her to stay? Why does it care? He caught confusion in her gaze and decided that she was in love with him. By her reaction, this was too noticeable. The young man recalled, taking a vacation? She will lose the whole academic year and be younger than him at the rate. Will it suit her? The girl thought. She understood. If she returned later, she will have to obey, including him. And she did not want this. She admitted that she did not want to leave the temple. But she is forced. Parents. The decision was behind them. Reinhard continued attempts to influence Henrietta's decision. He used the situation with the prince and princess who remained in the educational institution as a significant argument. Their presence meant enhanced security measures, which means that the temple would become a reliable shelter. This argument was supposed to act on her father. Henrietta was surprised at his behavior. She was more and more convinced that in front of her, not just a student, in his manner to hold on, in the calm confidence and thoughtfulness of decisions, an experience was felt, which is rarely among adolescents. He resembled an adult who saw a lot. The answer to her doubts was a dry mention of his past. The streets raised him better than any mentors. Later, in the dining room, Ellen joined them. From that moment, the Trinity gathered in full force. Reinhard was going to cook. Henrietta watched this with amazement. Her ideas about him clearly did not include the skills of the cook. Left with Ellen alone, the girls never found what to talk about. Silence stretched a heavy canvas until Reinhard with food returned. Light tension dispersed, but not for long. Soon, a feeling of awkwardness appeared again, especially when Henrietta found out that other episodes, previously unknown to her, were between Reinhard and Ellen. Ellen wanted to show about the letter that Reinhard wrote to her, but the guy did not let her do this. Later, realizing that the feelings of Reinhard were frivolous, she was closed. The next day, there was an unexpected turn. Bertus intervened personally in this situation. His authority and pressure forced Henrietta and other students to abandon the idea of leaving the temple. This strongly changed the arrangement of the figures, and Reinhard with satisfaction noted that one of the key players remained in place. Later, when he went outside, Charlotte approached him. She was calm but focused. Reinhard obeyed her in a dumb request to follow her. The pass through the gate did not cause any doubt. The princess was allowed more than the rest. They went beyond the temple and headed to the district, where they last saw the boy she was looking for. During the walk, Charlotte made it clear that the current assessment system became extremely significant for her and Bertus. The results directly depended on what abilities each of them could develop in the future. It was for the sake of preventing the conflict between them that the emperor issued a decree prohibiting them to harm each other. The girl suggested checking the bench where the boy was seen for the last time. According to the seller, it was there that the scroll happened. They went inside. The owner of the shop at first refused to speak, but under the pressure of Charlotte, nevertheless reported that the boy allegedly robbed him. Reinhard listened with a stone expression on his face, but inwardly doubted. A story sounded too confidently and stretched too confidently, too calmly behaved, allegedly becoming a victim of theft. To lure the truth, Charlotte demonstrated a scroll and offered to buy it. The man, having carefully examined the goods, recognized the authenticity and expressed his readiness to buy it. It was then that Charlotte asked a logical question: how the boy could have time to get behind his back and abduct the scroll, if all this time the man stood by the counter and did not leave. Her reasoning led the seller out of balance. He broke furiously and in anger swung at the girl. Reinhard intervened without hesitation and measured the ardor of a man. After that, the guy made it clear that he no longer intends to endure the lie and demanded to tell the truth. When they left the shop, the tension between them was still felt. Charlotte noticed that Reinhard is too impulsive. She urged him to remain calm, especially in those situations where composure is more important than strength. Reinhard was surprised to watch Charlotte, who ate the usual street food with obvious pleasure. Once spoiled by court dishes, she now looked at the world differently. The girl calmly noticed that she had to chew even the old boot in captivity. After that, tastier than the dry biscuit which the boy shared with her, nothing existed. The real horror of conclusion was not in demons, but in people who went crazy with hunger and reached cannibalism before taking their lives. Reinhard sympathized with her, but before he had time to say anything, as Charlotte again switched to business, she recalled that they had important information. They tracked the path of the boy and, judging by the trail, came to the place where he could head. Reinhard recognized the street. On it was the Elleris shop. The door was locked. Charlotte tried to open it, but to no avail. A guy passed by who said that the shop was closed for a long time, and the hostess left somewhere. He knew nothing about her return, but Charlotte was not going to retreat. Applying force, she knocked out the door inside and entered the dark room. She demanded that Reinhard begin a search. They were looking for any demonic artifacts or traces of the boy. But before they could find anything, Elleris appeared in the room. She was inside all this time. Her gaze was full of surprise and anger. Who are these people, and why did they break into her shop? Charlotte was not embarrassed. She firmly made it clear that she came not to steal, but to talk. And this conversation was supposed to take place right now. After a difficult conversation with Elleris, Charlotte, and Reinhard, they silently sat on a bench near the shop. The girls sobbed from powerlessness. Reinhard recalled how the hostess assured that she could take care of the boy, although she was weak in magic, with a good heart and a desire to help. As an intermediary between them, she offered him himself, and Charlotte, to surprise, Reinhard readily agreed. This decision seemed to bring her relief. She even asked not to say a word to Bertus. Too much stood at stake. Reinhard promised to keep a secret. Everything turned out as it was beneficial. Charlotte calmed down, Elaris was not touched, and he turned out to be in the role of a coherent, which was now appreciated. But for some reason, there was still an unpleasant precipitate inside, as if he did something wrong anyway. He returned to the hostel late, and, going to the door, found Henrietta there. She looked irritable. It turned out that she was waiting for him all day to convey the news about the conversation with her father. Reinhard was surprised. He forgot that he entrusted her with this. The girl explained that she repeated his words exactly, but the Duke immediately realized that it was not her own plan. He guessed that someone else helped her come up with such a story. Henrietta admitted her father that classmates prompted the idea. Reinhard realized, on her part, it was the only possible move. The girl said that the Duke decided to come in person to meet with Reinhard. The visit was scheduled for the next morning. At the appointed hour, Reinhard entered the room where Henrietta's father was already waiting for him. The Duke immediately went to the matter, questioning, suspicion, bewilderment. He did not understand who this boy is and why his rebellious daughter obeyed him. Suspicions also concerned feelings. Did she not fall in love with him by chance? Reinhard answered honestly. He did not know what was happening in Henrietta's head, but there were no feelings on his part. Henrietta heard these words, utterly spoken. All this time she stood under the door and eavesdropped. Unable to stand it, she burst into the room, indignant and angry at her father. The Duke tried to justify himself with an awkward dream of grandchildren, but the girl did not want to listen to it. She put Reinhard out the door, told her father no longer appear without warning. Later, already in the corridor, she caught up with Reinhard. She spoke with a tear, tried to prove something first of all to herself. The girl claimed that she did not feel feelings for him. Reinhard did not believe. It even amused him. The girl began to scream right in the corridor, falling up more and more, and he, with a grin, slammed the door in front of her. On the other side, indignant screams and a knock on the door were heard. The noise behind the wall only caused Reinhard a grin. Everything has finally fell into place. Reinhard again attended classes in magic, but understood that his successes are far from the ideal. Yes, his strength was considerable, but it was far to perfection. He and Irony watched Connelin honing teleportation, albeit with an absurd side effect. After moving, it turned out to be completely naked. Intermediate exams were approaching. The students were preparing intensely. Everyone tried to squeeze the maximum of their capabilities. Reinhard glanced at Helen. She was not that she was not preparing, but as if she completely ignored the approaching test. She was more interested in dealing with struggle than studying, and it was angry. After all, he himself prescribed it as a character who will always accompany success, despite actions. The system took care of it, awarded for the very existence. And he, the author, now had to fight for a place in the top 10. At first he defiantly stated that he was also not going to prepare. But this did not make any impression on Helen. Then came a notification from the system. For the hit in the 10 best students, a generous reward was supposed to be a generous reward that could significantly advance it further. It was impossible to retreat. He sat down at the textbooks. When Helen saw him with notebooks and books, she reminded of his former words. But Reinhard only dismissed. The human nature is this: we say one thing, we do another. He himself felt irritation and bitterness, because to be among the best, he had to plow, while others received success by default. A scene that he himself wrote in memory. Ludwig, a quiet and inconspicuous student, shone at the exam, suddenly revealing his potential. It was this moment that became a turning point for him. But one person helped him to achieve success. Louis Antecton, the best student of a parallel class. Perhaps the time has come and Reinhard to turn to him for help. He went to the guy. Louis tensed noticeably, as if expected a blow. Reinhard did not hide surprise. He did not even touch him before. All that he needs now is help. Together with Louis Anthole, Reinhard went to the hostel belonging to their class. They began to disassemble the topics one after another, from the simplest formulas to complex magical theories. Charlotte noticed them. With restraint, but with interest, she asked whether it was possible to join them. Reinhard did not mind. Later, Ludwig also joined them. He looked enthusiastic, as if for the first time felt that it could become part of something important. Study boiled, but very quickly it became clear. Ludwig lagged behind. He confused elementary principles, could not even remember the basic concepts that all students knew from the first year. Reinhard lost patience. In a fit of irritation, he flared up and shouted at him. Charlotte intervened. Her voice sounded calm, but hard. She recalled that not everyone has the same possibilities, and Ludwig was not to blame for his helplessness. Nevertheless, the training continued. The atmosphere has become tense, but everything collapsed completely when Ludwig could not answer the question that even the younger student would know. This time, Louis exploded. He directly stated that Ludwig was just a fool, and it seems that he was not destined to understand even the basics. Charlotte sharply rejected the accusations. According to her, the wine lies not on Ludwig itself, but on the empire, which for years ignores the education and strangles the system without giving equal access to knowledge. She, like the future heiress of the throne, vowed to change this. And then, as if losing control, she sarcastically asked Ludwig whether they had her head in childhood. Reinhard realized the humiliation, which previously emanated from him and Louis, now reached the limit and came from Charlotte herself. He preferred not to intervene anymore. Having breathed deeper, Reinhard again focused on preparation. He asked Louis what topics, in his opinion, will appear in the exam this year. Louis gave a clear, verified analysis. Together they started solving the alleged tasks. Reinhard canceled morning training and plunged into his studies with his head. The exam day has come. The test turned out to be difficult, but not impossible. One question was left without an exact answer, a trifle, but she left the alarm in him. He felt that he could handle better. However, when the results were published, he was dumbfounded. First place. The second is Ellen. Third, Berthus. The fourth is Louis. The fifth is Christina. In the royal class ranking, his name was at the top. Classmates were surprised. No one expected this from him, especially he himself. Although Reinhard coped with an intermediate exam, he did not take the first place among the students of the academy. Moreover, he did not enter the 10 best students of the academy, which means that the system did not count the execution of the task and did not calculate the promised reward to him. When the students were allowed to leave the school territory, Reinhard went to Charlotte and handed her a letter from the boy. He wrote it on his own and asked for forgiveness for silence and for not reporting himself before. Charlotte happily accepted the letter and, having read it, did not hide the smile. The answer came faster than she expected, and this brought her relief. In parallel, Reinhard continued intense training with Helen. He noticed how rapidly the girl progresses. Her growth seemed almost unrealistic. Despite his own successes, he understood that he could not keep up with her. Nevertheless, thanks to classes with her, he easily defeated other students in competitions, not even using his own strength. When he stopped, Helen pushed him to continue, preventing him from relaxing. Reinhard took her pace, because he understood. It was through overcoming and constant load that he can grow. In the morning, on a run, Adrian made a conversation about the upcoming test, survival in extreme conditions. The teacher has not yet announced where it would pass, but Reinhard, like the author of this episode, knew the answer in advance. The script that he once wrote turned on the tropical island. At that time, he became interested in the topic of survival, studied it in all details, was inspired by stories, where the only goal was to survive. And now He was to survive what he himself once laid in this world. The teacher announced that on the island, students have to last 5 days. After that, he left the students alone. Most were confused, not knowing where to start. Reinhard, remembering the original scenario, knew that from his class the test would pass only one student, Helen. Everyone else had to give up. In contrast, the whole Class B was to withstand the test under the leadership of Ludwig. But from the moment Charlotte got into that class, the plot began to change. In order not to lose control of the situation, Reinhard instructed Bertus to follow the others, and he himself went to explore the territory with Helen. They managed to find coconut palm trees and bear fruit to the camp. When they returned, Bertus asked if Reinhard had survival experience. He admitted that he had not encountered such a thing before, but intends to do everything possible so that their team could handle it. He hoped that Bertus would also support the camp organization. Together they distributed duties, trying to coordinate the work of all participants. The main task was to create a shelter for an overnight stay, get fire and prepare filtered water, without which it would not be possible to hold out for a long time. Reinhard urged everyone to forget the previous conflicts and unite for the sake of a common cause. He assigned a special role to Liana. She had to do fishing and provide a team of food. Liana admitted that she still poorly controls her ability associated with electricity. Reinhard invited her to go deeper into the water and use the discharge for fishing, but she explained that she could not swim. The idea to incur her in her arms quickly fell off. The girl could accidentally hit her electric shock. Instead, Liana decided to try to look for something edible in shallow water. Meanwhile, the rest continued to work on shelter, using palm leaves as a building material. Henrietta screamed at some point, noticing a big beetle. This caused laughter of the rest, but the girl took everything seriously. Later, she was scared again when she saw Reinhard with a large Omar. He explained that this was the catch of Liana, and Omar was intended for dinner. However, Berthus noted that one Omar was not enough, and Liana again went to the fisheries. Water remained a acute problem. Coconut fluid was not suitable for hygiene and washing the wounds, so Reinhard decided to find a source of fresh water. Relying on knowledge of his own plot, he headed deeper into the forest, hoping that the spring would be nearby. During the search, he stumbled upon a dolphin who easily laid a wild boar. Despite her fragility, the girl coped with prey, but could not deliver her to the camp. Reinhard offered help. He knew that the dolphin comes from the kind of hunters and masterfully owns the bow. Later, she will have a talent for the magic of the elements. But until this moment, there was still time left. Returning to the camp with prey, Dolphin gladly informed Charlotte that they managed to catch a boar. Charlotte at first did not understand who was talking about. But, turning around, she saw Reinhard and was surprised at his presence. She did not expect to meet him in the opposite part of the camp. Dolphin explained that without his help, she could not deliver a wild boar. In response, Reinhard only noticed that he had enough and the share of meat for help. The rest of the group readily agreed, especially considering that Ludwig provided them with fish for the whole week. Reinhard watched with surprise how Ludwig, standing waist deep in the water, deftly and confidently hunted fish, as if it were a familiar thing for him. The guys told Reinhard that the meat could be taken later when they cut out the boar. In return, Ludwig offered a little fish. They had it in abundance. Reinhard returned to his camp not empty-handed, which Berthus noticed. He was surprised how he managed to get food, and he asked why another team decided to share. Reinhard explained that he simply helped Dolphin to convey a carcass of a boar, whom she got on her own. In gratitude, they agreed to give him food. There was still no full shelter in the camp, but the students tried their best. Each performed their part of the work. When the evening came, they fled fish on a spit. Henrietta asked in bewilderment how they are going to eat without cutlery, to which Reinhard reminded that they did not even have plates, so the fish would have to be put on the leaves. Laughter and fun came from a neighboring camp, while their silence and concentration reigned. Despite the total tension, Reinhard decided to share his portion with Henrietta. It was not clear to the girl why he was doing this, but he did not explain and simply invited her to eat. Suddenly, Helen threw herself into the water, which greatly surprised everyone. A few minutes later, she returned with several lobsters, whom she caught with a spear. They were also prepared at the stake, and dinner was satisfying. Later, in a conversation by the fire, the guys began to worry about possible wild animals in the jungle. To ensure security, Berthus proposed organizing duty. He insisted that Reinhard rest longer and was on duty last, because he had already done a lot. Reinhard did not consider his efforts significant, but Berthus was sure of the opposite. He admitted that it was thanks to Reinhard that their team did not give up at the very beginning. That night Reinhard was on duty last. Suddenly he noticed how Liana came out of the tent. He tried to stop her, not understanding where she was heading at such a time. The girl dismissed, but Reinhard was still trying to keep her, fearing for her safety. Then Liana hit him with irritation, leaving him in confusion. Only after that, she explained that she just needed to go to the toilet. Liana did not return for a long time, and Reinhard began to seriously worry. He faced a difficult choice: to go for the Duke's daughter and risk taking her in an awkward situation, or stay in place and may not wait for her to return. Trying to find a compromise, he called out and offered to give a signal with a spark. Once, if everything is in order. Twice, if you need help. The answer was 2 signals. Reinhard was confused, trying to understand what exactly happened. It turned out that Liana simply needed toilet paper, which, of course, was not on the island. Then he suggested bringing her water. Soon the girl returned, irritated and tense. She stated that she could no longer tolerate the lack of elementary conditions and was going to surrender. Reinhard tried to dissuade her. Considering that it would be stupid to give up after so many efforts, he found the strength to convince her to stay. Later, Henrietta came out of the tent, all in tears. Reinhard upset her view. He realized that something had happened to her. Henrietta quietly asked for help, and he immediately handed her a basin of water. Realizing that even in such situations, you need to be delicate and caring. A few days have passed. Students were able to finish the arrangement of the camp and finally dealt with household issues. But Reinhard did not leave the idea of the need to find fresh water. Together with Helen, he went in search of a stream. Exhausted and tired, they hardly moved. Listening, Reinhard caught the sound of water. Following the sound, the two of them found a waterfall, at the base of which a pure stream was seething. Helen, without hiding joy, rushed into the water, finally getting the opportunity to wash and wash clothes. She asked Reinhard to turn away, and he took advantage of the moment to do the same. When he finished, Helen had already fled to him with an alarming expression on his face. She pointed to the bones of animals and traces of bonfires that were near the waterfall. All this issued that there were other inhabitants before, perhaps predators, or someone else dangerous. The girl was sure that it was precisely such extreme conditions that they meant when announcing the test. Reinhard realized that they were not the only inhabitants of this island. Returning to the camp, Reinhard and Helen immediately reported their find. The news of fresh water pleased everyone. The prospect will finally wash and freshen up the mood of the tired group. But the alarming also followed good news. Reinhard said that they may not be alone on the island. The students did not know how to react to this. There were doubts whether to stay in the former camp or still move closer to the waterfall. Some suggested contact with someone who could hide in the depths of the island. In their opinion, it would be possible to pass the test faster. However, Reinhard hesitated. He proposed to just wash himself and restore strength a little. The group enthusiastically headed for the source. Laughter and joy returned to the faces of the guys. Reinhard watched them with satisfaction. Bertus, however, remained caution. It seemed to him that the place was too dangerous for the camp. He was disturbed by traces of animals and traces of bonfires. When everyone began to gather back, Reinhard offered to discuss the opportunity to settle down at the waterfall, but Liana spoke sharply against. She noticed that there are too many snakes. Helen had already killed one of them. After listening to the majority opinion, the group decided to return to its former place. The general decision was made the next day to again go to the source in order to replenish water supplies. Now everyone wanted to relax, but Reinhard insisted on strengthening the hut. The students did not understand the reasons for such a hurry, but still followed his instructions. He knew that very soon a storm would hit the island. When the storm really fell on the camp, the fortified shelters hardly withstood the pressure. Henrietta, covered by panic, was left without protection. Her hut collapsed. In tears and fear, she called for help. Bertus invited her to hide from one of the guys, but the girl was disoriented and could not move. Reinhard came to her rescue, saving from danger. He took the girl to his tent. The young man explained to Bertus that Henrietta was now safe next to him. The girl thanked him, and Reinhard asked her to use her magic to keep warm. Henrietta created a warm, luminous ball and, without hesitation, shared warmth with others. Reinhard noted how much she was different from the version of the character that he described in the original plot. This discovery turned out to be unexpectedly pleasant for him. He later went out into the street to check the provisions. The downpour was not as destructive as he expected. Bertus joined him and reported anxious news. One of the students disappeared. Reinhard realized the story went along the new path. Now, they had to survive those tests that used to fall to the share of Class B. According to Eric, who was on duty before Kyer, he slept during the shift. Eric woke him when it was time to transfer the post. There was a chance that something important occurred during duty, and Kyer had no time to warn the rest. It was also not ruled out that he could not stand the load, went into the forest and got lost, or his disappearance directly concerned the current task. Bertus allocated 3 possible versions of what happened. Kyer could go into the jungle and abyss, become a victim of local residents, or to be stolen by students from Class B. The last option suggested an attempt by rivals to disrupt the task and achieve the surrender of the enemy. Reinhard was surprised to observe Bertus's reasoning. He could not imagine that he was able to think so strategically. Himself, even as the author of the novel, could not foresee such turns. Bertus instructed Reinhard to find out whether Class B was involved in the disappearance of Kyer, with whom he was familiar. Reinhard went to their camp and found that he was destroyed. Ludwig responded to his call. The situation there also left much to be desired. Charlotte appeared later, and Reinhard noted that their group is not all right. In the conversation, it turned out that one of the students, Louis and Tecton, disappeared. Since the disappearance occurred on both sides, the theory of abduction of Kyer disappeared. Reinhard gave Charlotte information about the pure water source in the valley, after which he left the camp and returned to Bertus. They came to the conclusion that it was worth starting the search for the inhabitants of the island. However, before that, it was necessary to stock up on food. For the sortie, 5 were chosen who could fight and get food. The group was divided. Reinhard walked ahead, and Liana, behind, clearly experienced difficulties. She relied on her abilities, but her physical endurance suffered from her. Because of fatigue, she was getting worse. The guy offered to return, but Liana wanted to continue the journey. They made a halt. The girl took the knife from Reinhard, strengthened it with electricity, and returned it back. Soon, her attention attracted the silhouette. There was a deer ahead at a distance of about 15 meters. The goal was too far for the use of magic. They had weapons for throwing, but if you miss, the animal will run away. Reinhard asked Liana to charge the knife in his hands again, but, not taking into account that he was wet, he received the discharge himself. He was irritated and blamed the girl for negligence, believing that she had to know the side effects of her ability. The same, in turn, doubted his competence, recalling his first place in the exam. A dispute arose between them. Ultimately, Reinhard admitted that he himself did not think about the consequences and suggested continuing the search for the animal. They found a deer, but he was already dead. He was killed by jaguar. This greatly puzzled Reinhard. There were no such events in his short story, and the appearance of the predator violated the course of the usual script. When Jaguar noticed them, Reinhard oriented and made a decision. He instructed Liana to charge the spear with current and throw it towards the predator. The idea was to hit a puddle next to Jaguar. Electricity could frighten him. However, the throw turned out to be inaccurate, and the beast began to approach. There was no time for thought. Reinhard ordered Liana to direct the lightning at him, making him a conductor with his body. Armed, he rushed at Jaguar, knowing that without this blow to defeat the beast. The maneuver was successful. The predator was defeated. At this point, the rest of the group began to gather. Henrietta watched Reinhard with concern, but he assured her that he was not injured. They now had a deer carpet, suitable for food. Berthus later appeared, bringing 2 partridges. He easily caught them, thanks to the experience of hunting, characteristic of the nobility. Almost everyone gathered. There was only Ellen and Eric. One of the participants said that Eric disobeyed and went into the jungle in search of Kair. They decided to wait a bit, because everything should have been in order with Ellen. But Eric had fears. When it got dark, Reinhard with 2 comrades decided to go to look for the missing person. Reinhard understood why Eric did this. He, Kair, and Konu were inseparable from an early age and were considered a trio of best friends. Sunhard found Eric soon. He tried to take away the booty from Scarlet, which looked strange, especially considering that he had previously claimed that he had gone in search of a friend. The guy seemed to command Scarlet as if she was a subordinate. Reinhard watched what was happening. Scarlet applied force against Eric and accused him of unworthy behavior, adding that she was behind the protection of the princess. She made it clear that she was restrained only for the sake of principles. The situation was heated, and Reinhard intervened. He made it clear to Eric that he went too far. The guy was clearly annoyed by Eric's actions and decided to deliver him to Berthus. He met them calmly, but directly expressed his opinion. He admitted that in any group there is someone who behaves unreasonably, but it is not so scary. Worse, to be useless. Berthus recalled that Eric does not have superpowers, and he does not own magic, and his non-discipline put everyone in jeopardy. He made it clear to Eric that only it depends on him, whether he wanted to continue to be a burden. Eric covered repentance. He admitted his mistake and repented, promising that he would change. As a punishment, Berthus appointed him night duty. The rest parted in shelters, preparing for bed. The night was interrupted by disturbing cries. Waking up, the participants found that 2 of their comrades had disappeared. Their traces were not visible, but everything indicated that they were abducted. This happened before, but for the first time the attacker took away 2 at once. This seemed suspicious, because the movement with 2 captives should have been slower. Therefore, it was decided to immediately start the chase. Henrietta illuminated the road. In the forest, they unexpectedly collided with the group of Charlotte, who also looked for their missing comrades. It turned out that 2 disappeared from their camp. This confirmed that there were not 1, but 2 criminals. Traces leading in different directions only confirmed this. The groups decided to divide. Reinhard and his comrades headed for one of the traces. They drew attention to the fact that the traces belonged to the creature that was noticeably superior in height and weight. The path brought them to a deep gorge through which it was impossible to cross without special equipment. Fortunately, one of the participants remembered that they had a rope with them. The only option was Connolin's jump using teleportation to the other side. Despite the inconvenience, his strength left him without clothes after moving. There was no choice. Conolin teleported and fixed the rope on the opposite side. Reinhard and Ellen crossed the abyss, but the rest remained on the other side. When they tried to transmit information to them, it turned out that their voices did not reach their comrades. The signals with the hands did not give a result. Reinhard tried to warn them about the danger. Finally, Berthus caught a fragment of words and tried to understand what was the matter. But it was too late. Turning around, he saw an orc left the forest to them. The orc quickly waved his massive weapons, and the blow threw the guys in different directions. The rope stretched over the gorge could not stand it, and exploded. One of the students, having stumbled, fell into the lake below. Those who were on the other side rushed at the scatter, trying to avoid the fight. Reinhard and his comrades watched the water surface with anxiety, hoping that the guy managed to take advantage of the instant movement. This task was not based on a real threat to life, only a carefully recreated illusion of danger. Reinhard gave Connelin the order to again move to the opposite side of the gorge and re-fix the rope. Ellen, without hesitation, offered to follow the trail of the orc and try to eliminate it. She believed that she was able to cope. Meanwhile, Bertus and the girls fled away from the pursuer. He turned to Henrietta, hoping that she could use combat magic. But the girl admitted that in such conditions it would be difficult. Liana, whose ability to control electricity would seem useful, was also not able to do something. Bertus realized he has no other way out except to accept the battle. He remembered the descriptions of the orcs from the books, powerful but rude creatures that the soldiers of the past always won. Bertus hoped that he could repeat their success. He ordered the girls to keep combat abilities ready and rushed to the attack. With a blade in his hand, he rushed to the monster. Meanwhile, Reinhard and his group noticed outbreaks of battle and hurried to the rescue. Bertus fought courageously, but the orc was stronger. At one point, his axe almost reached the goal, but Bertus managed to activate the magic of movement, and he disappeared from the battlefield, having left the test. The next purpose of the orc was Liana. The girl desperately tried to stop him with the blows of current every time he was approaching, but the monster was more cunning. He threw an axe into her, and Liana, fleeing, also left the task. There was Henrietta, who hid on a tree. Frightened to the core, she could not move. The orc was approaching. At this critical moment, Ellen entered the battle. She moved at a striking speed. Her blade flickered in the air, striking from all sides. Her confidence and skill left no doubt. In front of them was a born warrior, the only one who really could stop the enemy. Henrietta, meanwhile, concentrated all her magical power in one powerful charge. After making sure that everyone had gone to a safe distance, she threw an energy shell in the orc. There was a bright flash, accompanied by a deafening explosion. The orc was destroyed. The explosive wave from the combat spell fell to the surrounding space, and Henrietta was thrown from the tree. She managed to cling to the branch at the last moment, but the forces quickly left her, and she slipped down. Reinhard, holding his breath, watched this. He understood that if a girl fell, she would leave the test and lose a well-deserved reward. He ordered Connelin to act. He, overcoming confusion, activated the ability of teleportation and was near Henrietta at that moment when she was already flying down. Henrietta thought for a second that she had died, but opening her eyes, she saw Connelin's face. Awareness came slowly, but when she realized that everything was behind, her legs themselves carried her to Reinhard. The girl hugged him, pressing him tightly, as if he had all the stability of the world. She trembled and cried. Emotions surged. She was really scared. Henrietta was looking for support, and only next to him could she afford weakness. Reinhard took a hug in confusion. He did not understand why it was thanks to him. After all, Connelin became the savior. But he nevertheless stroked the girl on the back, reassured, praised, said that she showed incredible courage and coped the best. However, the task did not end. They sat at the wreckage of wood, tired, exhausted, but in anticipation. Reinhard suggested, "The test will end only when the second orc will be defeated. Initially, according to his scenario, both monsters were supposed to fall at the hands of Ellen Artoria. But now everything went differently. One of the monsters destroyed Henrietta. At that time, Ellen sat aside and looked silently into the sky, as if looking for answers among the stars. The silence broke the light. Their artifacts flashed with a soft radiance. The system notified everyone. The group mission is completed. The second orc is defeated. Their curator appeared. He confirmed, the test is over. The group coped with the task. 4 survived from Class A, and it was Henrietta who defended the monster. In Group B, only 1 survived, Charlotte Decardias, and she alone defeated the enemy. Everyone who passed the test was waiting for a reward. Students found themselves in a real paradise. There was the sun, pure water, and rest. Those who left were also here. And, as it turned out, their failure was not so painful. While others fought for life and honor, they enjoyed calm and comfort. Reinhard lay on the soft sand looking into the sky and felt a slight bewilderment. This reward for defeat looked too pleasant. Bertus praised Reinhard for endurance and tactical thinking. He, in response, expressed admiration for Bertus's leadership. Bertus asked him to convey to Henriette and Ellen that they were magnificent. He himself did not dare to tell them in person, not in his style. Reinhard noticed that even Liana, even if she hadn't won, showed courage and will. This test, oddly enough, rallied their strange, unbalanced, but living Class A. Children splashed in the water. They called Reinhard. Bertus did not wait. He screamed with a scream, raising the fountains of spray. Reinhard did not resist. He felt that he could really afford to rest. Later, away from the total fun, Bertus went to Charlotte. He reminded her, everyone who is dear to her, the roads, and to him, especially one person. Bertus asked her not to provoke a situation in which he would have to kill Reinhard because of her rash acts. The class teacher summed up the voting results. Class A won in this test, which completely changed the outcome of history. In the original version, Class B stunted. It was he who got fame. Now the plot has gone on a new path. The next step was the definition of the most influential participants, according to the students themselves. When the voices were calculated, it turned out that Charlotte was recognized as a leader in Class B and in Class A to Henrietta. For a girl, this was a complete surprise. She did not feel like a hero, rather just surviving, but the recognition of classmates spoke the opposite. While the rest rejoiced at the rest, Henrietta spent time next to Reinhard. She sat silently, from time to time casting his eyes at him. Something disturbed her inside, but she stubbornly remained silent. Reinhard remained calm. Henrietta nevertheless found the strength to express gratitude in herself, but she did it so quietly and restrained that her words almost dissolved in the air. Reinhard did not go deeper, leaving everything as it was. The internal tension between them did not disappear. The girl flatly refused to say for what she expressed gratitude. They were still in the heavenly corner, where the rest enjoyed warmth and peace. Reinhard almost did not get up from a deck chair, completely surrendering to the rest. Charlotte approached him. She settled nearby and asked how long he was going to lie. He was also interested in how she coped with the orc, but the girl did not seek to share details. He never received an answer. A few days later, the students returned to the temple and quickly entered the usual rhythm. Morning jogging with Adriana, training on swords with Ellen, study. Everything returned to its own circles. At this time, Berthus sold the skin of jaguar killed during the mission. The buyer was the Duke of Silurian. His maternal grandfather was the same that he had previously ordered the murder of Reinhard. But Reinhard decided not to remember this. They honestly divided the money received from the sale between Reinhard, Ellen, and Dolphina. Reinhard and Ellen spent their shares on food and allowed themselves an evening in an expensive restaurant, a place where they used to be closed. This has become a small holiday against the backdrop of tense days. Life flowed its turn. Reinhard again plunged into training and study. Thanks to the stubborn efforts of the guy, not only his body changed, for the first time, he reached the level of F in fencing. It was an important step, the proof that his perseverance was not in vain. The system recognized him with a talent for self-improvement, and now his combat skills also switched to a new step. He jumped up a whole level, and this became a real holiday. Ellen carefully watched his progress. She was surprised by his behavior. Reinhard still felt a slight disappointment. The level D still seemed too low to him. He knew that his whole life was ahead, and all he needed was to continue to move forward. Every morning, Adrian persistently invited him to visit one place. The girl believed that this would change his eyes on a lot. She asked to give only one chance. And if this does not bring any benefit, he can no longer return there. There were many interests in the temple accessible to students. There were circles dedicated to science, art, alchemy, and magic. But besides this, there was a religious group, a closed, almost elite community. Its participants belonged to the royal and aristocratic classes and worshipped the 5 gods, who at the head of the spiritual hierarchy. It was there that Adrian brought him. Reinhard was met with warmth and cordiality. There were sweets and treats on the tables. The faces of others shone with friendliness. He felt unusual. Such sincerely friendly people were confusing him. After communicating with people like Bertus, he did not expect to meet such an atmosphere here. Sirer van Owen, a representative of one of the older noble houses, joined the meeting. She was the deputy head of the group, and in the absence of a leader, it was she who had to meet. The girl immediately noted his appearance. Since his admission to the academy, they did not intersect. But, as it turned out, she remembered him. At that moment, Reinhard did not know how he would perceive religious practice. But the atmosphere that reigned at the meeting was so calm and elevated that he decided to remain to the end. The meeting began with prayer to the gods. At that moment, Reinhard felt a surge of energy that filled his body and mind. Adrian, sitting nearby, seemed calm and peaceful. Everyone was happy that there was a place where you can gain not only physical, but also mental balance. It was difficult for Reinhard to take the gods seriously. After all, it was he who invented them, albeit involuntarily. Soon the conversation took an unexpected turn. One of the participants touched on the topic of secret worship, of demonic power inside the temple. It would seem that with the death of the king of demons, everything related to the demonic religion was supposed to disappear. However, after the salvation by Reinhard and his friends of several dozen demons, this faith did not fade away, but only went into the shadow. Serera, the leading meeting, warned everyone from discussions of this topic in the walls of the temple. The conversation soon turned into a safer channel. The guys were interested in the events of the competition on the island, and Reinhard had to talk about their adventures. At the end of the meeting, Adrian reported that no one demands to enter a religious group from him. He can just come and communicate if he wants. It was not an attempt to impose faith, but a sincere desire to show that good people really exist. These words made Reinhard think. He promised to come again. It was then that the system gave him a new task, to find out as much as possible about the secret religion of demons. In a conversation with Adriana, he tried to find out how great the threat of its existence in the walls of the temple was. The girl dismissed the alarms, considering them an exaggeration from the side of Ceres. According to her, everything is under control in the temple. Soon the conversation went to the personality of the chief leader of the religious group. Her name was Olivia Lance, and she was the daughter of Leviathan Lands, the head of the Order of the Paladins. The girl was respected and even called the Saint, which reflected not only her strength but also internal purity. Adrian admitted that she admires her and would like to be like her. However, Olivia has not appeared at meetings for a long time. Adriana was worried, but was afraid to approach her. Reinhard decided to intervene. He felt gratitude to Adrian for all her help and wanted to pay her the same. To find out more information, he went to Bertus. Bertus confirmed the importance of the personality of Olivia. He was surprised that she was going to leave the academy. This news upset him. The guy had high hopes for Olivia as the future leader of the Order of the Crusaders. This position would provide him, as the future emperor, an ally who will not create problems. Reinhard realized that Berthus's personal interests were behind this. Later, Berthus managed to find out that the decision of Olivia to leave the temple was due to the fact that she recognized a certain compromising secret of the order. According to him, this became for her a point of no return. Reinhard no longer wanted to leave everything out of chance and decided to visit Olivia personally. He did not know her, never saw before, and was a little nervous. However, opening the door, he was struck by her appearance. In his perception, she was almost divine. Her face seemed so pure and majestic. He realized why she was called Saint. Iridian. The conversation with her did not bring the desired result. Olivia did not change her decision. For her, this was a matter of honor. She believed that if she once goes against her beliefs, she would lose herself. Reinhard realized that this decision of the girl was carefully deliberate, so he left. The next day, during a run with Adriana, they witnessed how a carriage drove up to the temple. Leviathan Lance came out of her to pick up his daughter. A trace of a slap in the face was noticeable on the face of Olivia, and his eyes were tearful. Despite this, she assured that everything was in order. The father said goodbye to the students, not hiding his power position. Reinhard admitted to Adrian that he was trying to convince the girl to stay. But nothing came of him. Olivia's decision was conscious. There was no law in the temple, according to which the student could be taken by force, with the exception of the parent. When Reinhard asked how a person belonging to a religion where a marriage was prohibited could be a daughter, Adrian explained that Olivia was a reception. This confirmed his guess. Special hopes were assigned to her. Despite Adriana's alarm, Reinhard proposed to follow Olivia's departure. He was really worried about her fate. Using his ability of the Superlord, he overheard their conversation on the train. Leviathan demanded from the Daughter of Humility, assuring that she should come to terms with fate. But Olivia refused. She agreed to forget what she heard earlier if her father leaves her alone. But she was not going to go against herself. Reinhard caught the main thing: pain and suffering. He realized that the girl would not be so simply left. They sat near the fountain and analyzed what they heard. In the original version of his novel, Olivia Lance did not exist. Even during the opening of the gate, she did not play any role. This meant that in the future it was either waiting for death or complete moral destruction. The system issued a new quest. He was to change her fate. If it saves Olivia, as Charlotte once saved, the story will go an unpredictable way. For this, he will receive glasses and an accidental ability belonging to Olivia. If he doesn't do anything, the girl will be broken or perish. And this time, he could not stay away. Adriana cried. Her heart could not come to terms with such an ending. She did not want Olivia to disappear without a trace, disappear in pain and silence. Reinhard felt the same. Even if he knew too little about the girl, this was enough so as not to wish her suffering. To penetrate the temple of the Crusaders and pull out Olivia, this was higher than their strength. They were only students related to rules and restrictions. Help could come from Charlotte or Berthus. However, none of them had reason to take risks for the sake of Olivia. Even if someone tried to intervene, it would be regarded as an attempt on the internal affairs of the order. At some point, Adrian asked a simple but important question: will something change if others learn about what is happening? Reinhard had no doubt. Publicity could become a weapon. The influence of the temple was strengthened, but even a powerful faith could not plug up all the mouth overnight. However, there were no guarantees here. While rumors spread, irreparable could happen to Olivia. They needed someone with a significant authority. Then a thought arose in the head of Reinhard. He suggested using the force of the academy. If teachers learn about this situation, it may be possible to change the situation. Although Adrian did not immediately take his words seriously, Reinhard was sure the academy should take care of his students. In addition, he decided that if Sarah intervenes, then this situation would not be able to ignore. But even in this, Adrian saw a danger. In the best case, they could be accused of slander, of the worst, transferred to the inquisitors. Reinhard offered a different path, to write an anonymous letter in which they know everything that they know. The letter should have been not just a prosecution, but a reason for doubt and inspections. The plan was simple. Send a letter during the meeting and pretend to be shocked by the contents. Together with other students, they could initiate an investigation. So they did. Reinhard wrote a letter, and Adriana threw it into the main hall, where a religious group gathered. Time was moving inexorably forward. The weekend came. Reinhard opened the system window and began to analyze the situation. He was looking for a way to influence the course of events, but to no avail. All changes were deviated. The system did not allow to adjust the future without a huge fee. To change the fate of Olivia, 10,000 achievements were required. It stunned. For the first time, he noticed that the pre-examination function, which was previously inactive, is now available. The system warned, the more points it will spend, the more accurate the picture will be, but the development options will be divided into parts. He began small. For 100 points, the young man received the first fragment of the development of events. The image was Olivia. She was in prison. Her nails were torn, clothes were in the blood, and the body was tormented by torture. Reinhard realized she was not just tortured, healed, and then crippled again. If this continues, the girl will break. Their current plan is doomed. For 200 points, he saw Sarah, who speaks with teachers. She mentioned that she did not have time to talk with Olivia. In the presence of her father, she did not dare to open up. The teachers were powerless, students did not achieve a result, and mentors could not help. Reinhard spent another 800 points. He needed a complete puzzle. He saw a meeting of the teaching council. One of the teachers expressed the alarm. She felt that Olivia was in trouble. Her colleague said that the temple could no longer intervene. The decision was made. The girl left the walls of the academy. The investigating authorities could not take actions. There was no evidence, and there was no legal basis for this. Everything happened too fast. One day was not enough for them to prevent what was happening. Reinhard finally realized, on the eve of Olivia, she wrote a statement about leaving the academy. From this moment, the temple lost the opportunity to intervene in its fate. Even if the suspicions are justified, formally, she is no longer a student. Gradually, the picture developed. Serera really saw with Olivia, but the girl could not say anything, either from fear or because of a magical impact. After that, they turned to the leadership of the temple, but could not present evidence. And when the temple tried to intervene on his own, it was too late. The investigation was stopped, and Olivia could not be saved. At that moment, Adrian approached him. She said that Serera found their letter. Now it's time to act. The meeting began. Serera carefully watched Reinhard. She did not mind his presence. She knew that he sincerely worried about Olivia. Serera announced to the students that she received an anonymous letter. It said that Olivia was held by force and the Crusaders are tortured. Hearing this, the students were confused. It was difficult for them to believe in such a thing. The accusations seemed too monstrous to be true. Serera said that the next day she would personally go to visit the girl to make sure everything is fine with her. Reinhard realized everything develops as in the original plot. He recommended that the girl take with her a freshman named Evia, a gifted telepath that can read thoughts at a distance. This could make it possible to find out the truth, even if Olivia could not speak. Serera appreciated the idea, and the decision was made. The next day, Serera, along with Evia, ended up in the living rooms of the Crusaders' houses. Evia was clearly nervous, but Serera tried to maintain external calm. The meeting should have looked formal, as if it were just a concern of a mentor about a student. Soon the head of the Crusaders appeared, accompanied by a daughter. Olivia was sad and was silent all the time. Her father was outraged by a visit and said with neglect that he had every right to pick up her daughter when he wished. The dialogue did not work out. The atmosphere became more and more tense. Evia realized that it was necessary to act. She telepathically turned to Olivia, saying that she could communicate with her mentally. If the girl is really in danger and cannot speak, she should have given a signal. Olivia wound the strands of hair on the finger, which confirmed the words of Evia. Then she touched her shoulder. This indicated that she was tortured, and she needed help. Returning to the academy, Evia reported that Olivia was really holding against will. Serera decided to immediately convene a collection of teachers. The information was taken seriously. The guard was collected, and soon they headed to the house of the Crusaders. The operation was successful. The girl was released, but Reinhard no longer followed the details. He watched from afar without interfering. Berthus, as always, spoke without unnecessary emotions. But with a fraction of mockery, he noticed that it was Reinhard who managed to stir the entire system. Reinhard denied his involvement, but inside he felt. Berthus almost guessed. The insight of this guy was frightening. Berthus said that the situation is now working for him. Reinhard did not immediately understand what he had in mind. Then the prince added that the Order of the Crusaders, after this incident, would be dissolved. Berthus calmly, almost every day, told Reinhard that his actions would lead to the collapse of the Order of the Crusaders. Those of fanatics who do not accept the fall can rebel. And then a war will flare up in which the blood of more than one victim will spill. He noted with irony that, saving one girl, Reinhard managed to launch a mechanism that could destroy many lives. Reinhard turned pale. He did not believe that all this was his fault. The usual, it would seem, intervention caused the effect of the butterfly. One letter, and the world swayed on the verge of disaster. The young man desperately stated that he did not want this. He just wanted to save Olivia. Berthus, still calmly, said that he could stop the impending storm. Reinhard asked him to do this. Olivia was saved, but the details of its content in captivity did not surf. Berthus took care of this. Thanks to his influence, the case was reduced to the home conflict. The father supposedly simply lacked sensitivity. No torture, no violence, only one person who did well with his daughter. The emperor, meanwhile, had already selected a new leader for the order, obedient, convenient, and controlled. While these backstage changes took place in the shade, Olivia returned to the temple and continued to study. That same evening, she came to Reinhard and asked to talk to her alone. Under a quiet sky in the evening light, she thanked him for trying to save her. She knew the truth. The letter was the hands of Reinhard and Adriana. There was no sense in denying no longer any sense. She looked into his eyes and reported that she was renouncing faith and refusing to be part of the cult of the gods. Reinhard carefully asked if she really thought about it. Olivia nodded. For her, the gods are empty figures. If they were at least a little not indifferent, they would have intervened for a long time. But they were silent while crimes were committed by their name. Reinhard was surprised to watch her. That tender, holy Olivia, which he knew, disappeared. In her place was another girl, cold and distant. She thanked him again, and then, with a slight smile, she said that now that she does not belong to any cult, she has the right to her personal life. And she directly asked if he had fallen in love with her. Reinhard blushed. He could not lie. He had never seen such beauty before. Olivia laughed. She kissed him on the cheek and added that perhaps one day, when he gets older, there will be something between them. These words caused a storm of emotions in it, and soon after that, he was awarded a reward. For the salvation of Olivia and for changing the course of history, he got one of its abilities. The resistance of magic. Adrian could hardly believe in the guy's words. The idea that Olivia kissed Reinhard seemed ridiculous to her. That modest, pious girl, as she remembered her before, could not decide on such an act. But all the evidence spoke the opposite, and Reinhard had no reason to lie. Reinhard seemed to Olivia intentionally played his feelings. He believed that the girl simply manipulates them, taking advantage of attention and the situation. Adriana said that Olivia invited them for lunch, supposedly in gratitude. Reinhard did not want to go, but he had no choice. When they arrived at the restaurant, Olivia was already waiting for them. She was elegant and confident. Her behavior made the impression of a carefully rehearsed setting. Under the views of strangers, she took both hands and led them inside, ignoring all protests and discontent. At the table, Olivia again expressed gratitude for her salvation. Adriana emphasized that this would not have happened without the participation of Reinhard. When it came to his abilities, the guy reluctantly spoke about his gift of self-hypnosis, the ability to achieve a result only when he himself believes in it. This feature made a strong impression on Olivia. She expressed her admiration very unexpectedly. Olivia said that now they are obliged to get married, because Reinhard saved her life. Her intentions became clear when she said that she submitted documents to the magistracy and was not going to leave the academy until the end of his training. Reinhard realized everything got out of control. The scenario on which the story was going on was broken. Now everything happened differently, and this caused him anxiety. At the academy, Olivia increasingly showed attention to him. She was interested in his personal life, tried to understand if he had a girlfriend. Olivia was now constantly located somewhere nearby. She did not miss the opportunity to approach, touch his hair, kiss on the cheek, and did it defiantly, not hiding from eyings. This behavior caused a storm of gossip. The guys began to discuss Reinhard behind him, considering him a womanizer, not understanding how he attracts the girls so much. Soon, they began to contact him for advice. Canolin expressed sincere interest, hoping to find out what his secret is. He began to believe that Reinhard has some hidden techniques or special techniques that allow him to have girls. Kono tried to figure out what was the secret of the popularity of Reinhard among girls. It seemed to him incredible that someone could cause such attention to the opposite sex, doing nothing for this. Reinhard himself could not give an intelligible answer. Everything happened as by itself, without effort or intentional behavior on his part. Despite this, Kono did not retreat and practically begged to share at least some advice. Reinhard felt embarrassed. In his life, there was not even a single real date. Nevertheless, in order not to leave a persistent classmate with nothing, he recommended being kinder and more attentive to the feelings of girls. Kono was delighted and hastened to put the advice in practice. The first to whom he came to was Liana. He invited her to have lunch, but she refused, citing a physical education lesson. Then he decided not to give up and offered the same to every girl in the classroom. However, they all refused, and this completely upset him. Supered, he returned to Reinhard and began to doubt the effectiveness of the advice received. He did not know what to say in response. Then Kono suggested holding a demonstration. Let Reinhard himself show how he manages to have girls, and he will watch the process. Although the idea seemed to Reinhard absurd, he nevertheless agreed, hoping that the failure would only prove how an ordinary person he was. He deliberately approached Liana with the same proposal with which Kono had previously addressed. He was confident in refusal, especially given her frowning mood. However, to his surprise, the girl did not want to eat, but agreed to drink together. Kono was waiting for the result, and did not hide his disappointment, learning that the girl agreed. Again, he could not understand why it works with Reinhard, but not for him. At that moment, Bertus joined them. He stated that he knew the true reason for this success and suggested discussing it in his room. When they were left alone, Bertus warned the guy that he would tell the truth, which could be difficult to accept. Kono assured that he was ready to find out the secret method of a comrade and was ready to hear the truth. Then Bertus directly said, "The whole point is that Reinhard is just more beautiful than the rest of the guys." This simple and harsh truth touched Kono very much. The next day, resentment, bewilderment, and the hidden envy that the guys in the class experienced only intensified. His behavior, Reinhard attracted the attention of the Royal Class magazine. Journalists tried to collect as much information as possible about him, asked the students, and recorded every little thing. Ellen expressed the opinion that she does not consider him especially beautiful. Henrietta, succumbing to emotions, called him terrible and accused him of mockery, but could not give specific examples. When she realized that her words were fixed, she was forced to admit that Reinhard helped her in the past, and was not so bad. When it came to appearance, Henrietta denied his attractiveness. Liana de Grant was more honest, recognized Reinhard beautiful. The opinions of other students were divided. Someone considered him crazy, someone was sharp, but sincere. Some spoke about him as a bully. Even the princess spoke with praise, describing Reinhard as a decent and reliable person. However, almost everyone mentioned a difficult nature. Journalists collected controversial material. Positive qualities alternated with dubious. However, following their tasks, they decided to present the hero in an ambiguous light. In their opinion, the pen was really stronger than the sword. Ellen later told Reinhard that information was collected about him. He did not understand why strangers were interested in his personal life. It was unpleasant for him that even Ellen could not say anything in his defense, despite everything that they survived together. This made him think about how others perceive him. In early June, the issue of the magazine was released under the heading of "The Events of the Temple in Search of Truth." The article said that the origin of Reinhard is unknown. He appeared suddenly and began to quickly develop his abilities. Some spoke positively about him. Others were apprehension. One anonymous source directly called him a bully. Reinhard realized that journalists deliberately collected incriminating information, setting it in a bad light. Due to the mention of girls, he looked like a frivolous womanizer, and, thanks to other words, as an aggressive, a cocky type. He was angry, especially to Henrietta, thinking that she could give out some bad information about him. However, she denied her involvement and assured that she tried to help him. Reinhard, feeling that he had gone over to the stick and apologized for his behavior. Henrietta, although upset, did not want to delve into the conversation. She only hinted that she knew him, and she knows that he would not leave everything just like that. Reinhard understood. If he responds by force, this will only confirm the opinion of him as a hooligan. He admitted that the article has a grain of truth. Not in terms of flirting, as Henrietta thought, but in another, more deep aspect. The girl reminded him of rumors associated with older students. One article has changed a lot. She put his reputation under attack and ruined the relationship. Although he did not want to attach any importance to this, everything was in full swing inside. His demonic nature demanded reprisals, but his mind kept him from rash actions. Reinhard went to the editorial office of the student newspaper, intending to deal with the authors of the article that put it in a negative light. But, opening the door, he saw that Charlotte was already there. Her presence was not accidental. She foresaw that he would come, and decided to get ahead of him to avoid conflict. Charlotte indicated the distortions made in the article. There was not a word in her that she herself said about Reinhard as a reliable man and a faithful friend. Instead, the material was filled with speculation and ridiculous statements. She accused the journalists of bias, that they ignored her words. The editors tried to justify themselves, saying that they only reflected the mood in society. Charlotte's attention was attracted by other prepared articles. Among them were materials that touched political topics and rumors about internal instability in the temple. Although much of what was written was only an assumption, the texts were guessed in the texts of the alarming grains of truth. She was outraged that such information could reach the general public, because the consequences could be destructive. At that moment, Reinhard received a system notification. New tasks opened to him. Now he was faced with the task of finding the militias hiding in the temple, as well as to check rumors about the appearance of demon worshippers. Experience glasses were promised for execution, but he himself felt how the load of obligations would be heavier. The flow of new tasks was so extensive that he asked Charlotte to stop, at least for a while. Later they sat behind tea, trying to find the points of the support in this situation. Charlotte proposed uniting and checking the reliability of spreading rumors together. Reinhard understood that he had no other choice. He could not refuse. The princess also asked him about one personal service, to transfer the letter to the boy. Reinhard took the letter to the Ellerist shop. Before writing the answer, he read the message. In it, Charlotte recalled the events of the last exam on an uninhabited island. Reading her lines, he realized that he had to write an answer as soon as possible. However, he also realized one lie was already allowed, and another followed it. The web of deception was addictive. Reinhard felt the alarm. If the truth pops up, it can destroy everything that he built with such difficulty. His relationship, trust, influence in the temple, everything could crumble. He was depressed by this awareness. Ellerist, noticing his condition, hugged him, wanting to alleviate his inner pain at least a little. Reinhard one day handed the letter to Charlotte. The girl was immensely glad to get him. Sincere gratitude was reflected in her gaze. Reinhard furtively watched her, trying not to give out his own feelings. Later, they were going to deal with the analysis of information about adherents related to demonic beliefs. However, Charlotte postponed this, citing pains in her legs after a recent training. Earlier, discussing the topic of religion with Ellerist, Reinhard heard from her that the demons actually did not have their own gods. These were the same deities in which people believed. It's just that humanity could not reconcile with the thought that both demons and people worship the same forces, so it distorted faith, inventing other names to the gods in order to separate themselves. It was raining. On one of these days, he and Helene trained. The girl was scattered and could not concentrate. Reinhard invited her to take a break. Then she admitted that he reminds her of her brother. Before leaving for war, he promised that he would never disappear from her life without warning. Reinhard realized how much he knew about her and how little she knew about him. All her feelings were built on the image that he created, hiding his true essence. Helen felt this wall between them. She was tormented by questions. She did not understand why he was looking at Charlotte with the same attention and pain with which her brother looked at her. Why is the wine red in his gaze? What torments him from the inside? Reinhard could not answer her. Any truth would reveal his true story. The fact that he was a writer, transferred to this world as a punishment. He was not ready to open, so he answered evasively, mentioning only that he does not like rain. Helen left. In the end, she admitted that she was tired of being constantly losing loved ones. She did not want to lose him. But if there is no honesty between them, there can be no relationship. Since then, she no longer appeared on the training parade ground. The rainy season was not going to retreat. Helen still did not appear in training, and Reinhard, avoiding her, convinced himself that it was for the better. Deremination seemed to him the right choice. He hid too much. He could not say too much. On one of the training, he did not immediately notice that only he and the cliffman remained in the hall. Both silently honed the tricks, without exchanging words or glances. The silence hung between them a deaf, heavy wall, until he withstood and reminded Reinhard that you could still make peace with Helen. These words seemed to have a crack in self-deception. Reinhard tried to talk to the girl, but she did not even listen to him. In the corridor, Henrietta suddenly intercepted him. She gently suggested listening to him if he wants to share his experiences. Reinhard, out of habit, dismissed. It seemed to him that it was easier not to let anyone deeper than needed. Henrietta said that at the weekend, the bridge, on which they were going to walk with friends, was flooded. This made Reinhard startle. He remembered that his friends lived under that bridge. And alarming thoughts flashed through my head. What if they slept when the water began to arrive? He rushed into the street, ignoring the cold rain, and reached the place where the bridge was. Everything was flooded. A brown stream hid the usual outlines of shelters. In the hope of finding traces, he hurried to the nearest guard, who said that those who lost the night are usually heading to the market. In the market, Reinhard came across a man with a gloomy face. He warned the guy that there was a dangerous place here. Later, he noticed the emblem on the Reinhard umbrella, a symbol of the academy. In the eyes of a man, interest flashed, quickly replaced by aggression. He demanded money from the guy. Reinhard did not intend to obey. I hit the first, unexpectedly sharply and accurately. The man recoiled and fell, but soon rose, and Reinhard realized that he had made a mistake. Others appeared in the lane. He was trapped. He was seized and tied to a chair. Everything was taken from the young man. Money, a pendant from Alaris, which he always carried with him like a talisman. One of the attackers learned that Reinhard, a student of the academy, and mentioned Loyar, with whom this gang had unresolved accounts. They decided to use Reinhard as a bait. Inside, Reinhard only hoped that the ring hiding his essence would go unnoticed. Otherwise, the situation could become much worse. The disappearance of Reinhard agitated the entire academy. His absence in the classroom became too obvious to remain unnoticed. The class teacher began with inquiring classmates, but no one could say anything definite. The alarm quickly grown into panic. A full-scale investigation was announced. Rumors scattered instantly. Those who really knew Reinhard felt something worse happened. Helen could not find a place. In the memoirs, the image of his brother popped up. She begged him to stay, shouted that the family was more important than the debt, and he only quietly promised to return. And left. Forever. Then she could not forgive him for this departure. The last words that he heard from her became, "I hate you." Elena screamed this when her father, clenching his fists, ordered her to shut up. She hated them all, especially her brother. And now, standing at his grave, she realized that she had no right to such words. The wine corroded her from the inside. Now everything has been repeated. Only now Reinhard disappeared. Only now she realized how important he was for her. Helen saw Henrietta. She was sitting in the rain, wet, as if already giving up. She did not allow her to stay in this numbness. Helen said they should find him. Together, they returned to a flooded bridge, the last place where Reinhard could see. They knew that the Royal Guard had already combed this area. The search was organized by order of Charlotte and Berthus, but he did not give anything. As if the guy had evaporated. Not a body, not a trace, not a single clue. The guard, who was standing by the bridge, only repeated the same thing. The homeless could only go to the Venster market. Henrietta turned pale. Her brothers once strictly punished her not to go their too dangerous place, especially for girls. But Helen already understood what had happened. She believed that Reinhard went to look for those who lived under the bridge, and, most likely, I ran into a local mezzanine. A fight started. He did not retreat. It was in his spirit. And if everything went badly, they would have found a body from him for a long time. But he is not. It means he is alive. Somewhere. Henrietta agreed with Helen. They decided to check the lane at the market. The girls tried to understand why the city guard failed to find even a trace. Perhaps they were looking for too formally. Perhaps the wrong ones were interviewed. Those who really knew Reinhard would not speak with representatives of the authorities. They returned to the bridge again, from where it all started. The guards still did not see the homeless, but one of them mentioned that they no longer live in the market, but sell goods on the train. This has become a new clue. The girls went there. On the train, they found a man who really knew Reinhard. Hearing about the disappearance of the young man, he was alert, and said that this should be urgently transferred to the main one. The man did not want to take them with him, but they insisted. He warned that the main woman is not easy, and you need to choose words. Loyar came out to meet them. Her cold gaze slipped over the girls with obvious bewilderment. Upon learning why they came, she ordered them to immediately return to the academy, promising to figure it out and find Reinhard. But Helen refused. Her determination caused Lawyer irritation. The tension between them quickly grew into a collision. Lawyer tried to hit, but Helen dodged. A fight began. The blows poured one by one, but Helen blocked each of them. Henrietta watched what was happening with fright, not believing that no one was interfering. The men only stepped aside, fearing the rage of Loyar. The woman was surprised to note that this girl really knew how to defend herself. Her blows did not reach the goal. Helen clearly had combat experience and acted for sure. She did not answer with an attack, but restrained the onslaught. For Loyar, this was an alarming signal. Such as Helen could pose a threat in the future. Such did not obey. Such destroyed the balance. She decided to eliminate the potential problem immediately, without waiting for the consequences. In front of her stood not just a stubborn schoolgirl, but a possible enemy who was able to once intervene in the affairs of the world, where demons and people balanced on the verge. Loyar seriously intended to kill Ellen, considering this the best way to get rid of the threat. She darted on the attack without restraining her strength. Ellen felt a mortal danger, and for the first time in her life realized that she was not a person in front of her. Having gathered all the internal forces, she repelled the attack. This was a surprise to Loyar. Particular surprise caused how Ellen managed to call the sword again, associated with the soul. As soon as the weapon fell into the hands of Loyar, it disappeared and again turned out to be Ellen, as if it had not recognized another mistress. At this moment, Loyar realized that he was dealing with an unusual opponent. She stopped, deciding to retreat, not bringing to the tragedy. By announcing that such a girl would be only a burden, she told everyone to disperse. Ellen, having survived a storm of emotions, sat on the bench. She could not understand who this woman was, where she got such a power. Henrietta came up, trying to cheer her friend, noting that she was with dignity. But Ellen was too shocked. She asked Henrietta to return to the academy. She herself remained to sit alone, under the weight of thoughts. Meanwhile, Loyar came to Alaris, saying that Reinhard had disappeared and, apparently, the Guild of Thieves abducted him. They decided to go in searches together. Alaris applied a spell that led them to one of the hidden doors. Along the way, she noticed the wound at Loyar and asked her origin. She did not hide that she had a fight with a classmate Reinhard, and she was not so simple. Alaris reported Loyar for recklessness. They both agreed that they should not talk about the incident of the Sarkagar, otherwise he would require a brutal reprisal. In the corridors of the academy, Henrietta collided with Bertus. He asked if she walked in search of Reinhard. A contented smile played on his face. Henrietta no longer had illusions about his character. Once she tried to make friends with him, but now she clearly felt cold and calculating the external politeness. He assured her that everything was fine with Reinhard, and he would return soon. Loyar entered the building, ready to deal with those who dared to hold Reinhard. But, to her surprise, the guy calmly sat in the center of the room, not looking either scared or captured. No one kept him by force. Reinhard explained that after the guild capture of the thieves, their leader, noting that he was a student of a prestigious school, returned all his things to him and released him. Instead of leaving, Reinhard himself asked to get rid of a school ticket with a tracking function so that he would not be found ahead of time. Then he was discovered by a guard subordinate to Bertus. He informed them that he was here of his own free will, fulfills the task, and asked to pass on to the prince so that he would not intervene and would not spread about his location. After that, with similar words, he met guards sent by Charlotte. Now he was officially in the Guild of Thieves, and was going to take the post of commander-in-chief in it. However, he intended to transfer the powers to be transferred to Lawyer, so that on his behalf the organization led. Lawyer refused to take such responsibility. After the discussions, they had to abandon the idea of managing the guild, and they left it. Later, Reinhard had to listen to notations from Lawyer and Elleris. Both were concerned about his disappearance. The guy apologized to them, realizing that he made them worry. Returning to the academy, he gave official testimonies about what had happened. The woman who accepted the information did not ask unnecessary questions, only wished him to be careful. It rained outside. Reinhard went to Helen. The girl, wounded after a skirmish with Lawyer, looked tired but resistant. He went to her, intending to reveal his secret, but did not have time. Helen hugged him, preventing him from saying a word. It was only important for her that he was alive and nearby. Reinhard for the first time really felt the heat of her touch. He was increasingly thinking about the people who were worried about him. Bypassing those who showed participation, he realized that there was another door to which he did not knock. The guy came up and knocked. A voice was heard from behind the door. The girl asked him to leave. Reinhard was sure that Henrietta was crying again. He pretended to leave, but as soon as he turned away, the door opened. The girl stopped him. She admitted that she was very worried about him. Reinhard tried to console her and realized that he had leaked a stick with this disappearance. During their conversation, Henrietta mentioned that Ellen did not stop his searches all the time. Even after she was refused help, she stayed on the street in the rain, continuing to wait. Henrietta suggested that now the girl might get sick. Reinhard came to Ellen. She opened the door, and his guess was confirmed. Her appearance was terrible. She was really sick. He brought the porridge and fed it himself. Ellen admitted that her secrets were not important to her. She simply did not want him to ever leave her. Reinhard apologized for making her suffer. Later, changes began in their class. Henrietta got closer to Ellen. Two more girls soon joined their small company. Together they began to spend time, which was previously unusual for Ellen. She avoided Reinhard. He assumed that this was due to the fact that she opened to him, showed weakness, spoke about feelings, and now hesitates. The guy felt embarrassed and also did not dare to approach her. On one of the training, they and the Cliff again were together. Cliffman noticed that they could train together. It would be easier to get closer. Reinhard realized that their conversation began to resemble a conversation with a girl who shares the news about the opponent. This made him think about returning Helen again. Meanwhile, Ellen went to Lawyer with a request to train her battle. Lawyer first refused Ellen, considering her request unreasonable. She remembered Reinhard's warning, not to touch this girl. However, Ellen was persistent. She noted that Lawyer has a technique that none of their classmates own. Lawyer, not wanting to get involved, advised the girl to train with peers, but she did not retreat. Under the pressure of Ellen's perseverance, Lawyer agreed to one training. At this time, Reinhard continued classes with Clippman. However, by evening, he felt bad. In the corridor, he ran into Ellen, returning from training. Its appearance was heavy. The clothes were torn. There are many abrasions and bruises on the body. Reinhard stopped her and asked what happened. The girl admitted that she turned to Lawyer, and she agreed to train her. She asked if he was against it. Reinhard, understanding the sincerity of her intentions, said nothing in agreement. He offered to take her to the first aid post. Later, the young man began to accompany her to training for Lawyer. Ellen left from there beaten. She did not manage to assimilate the technique. Instead of training, she was simply beaten. Even close, Lawyer already looked at the girl with sympathy, and secretly angry at their mistress for excessive cruelty. After training, Ellen ate simple food with the poor. Later, Reinhard attributed her to her back to the academy. This did not go unnoticed. Rumors began to walk. The time of summer holidays came up. The guys were sitting at the table and discussing who was going to spend the summer. When they saw that Reinhard had not touched the dessert, They asked about the reason. He replied that he had a task, to saturate Ellen. The girls were confused by his strange formulation. The conversation continued. One of the guys was going to leave for a country house. Someone wanted to devote time to study. Ellen suddenly stated that she plans to join the adventurers and go to dark lands. This caused surprise. No one expected such a step from her. The girls considered it dangerous, but Ellen was strongly tuned. The story of the plans of Ellen caused a lively response in his friends. They enthusiastically reacted to her intention to join the adventurers and noted how bold and interesting it was. Ellen explained that the academy allowed her to take one scroll of movement with her, which slightly increased her chances of survival. However, the risk still remained huge. Reinhard could not restrain himself and asked Ellen to abandon this venture. To his surprise, the girl immediately agreed. The rest did not hide their bewilderment. Her sharp change in the decision seemed strange to them. Lunch came to an end. Later, Reinhard went to Ellen and offered to talk. He was worried why she continued to blame herself for his disappearance. Ellen admitted that she could not understand where this feeling of guilt comes from. She knew that she was not to blame, but could not let go of this thought. She was especially afraid that the same thing could happen to Reinhard as her brother. Reinhard realized how deeply Ellen was involved in his search, and how much she risked for his sake. He decided that she deserves to know the truth. Having crouched on the bench, Reinhard admitted that the Thieves' Guild really abducted him. When they found out that he was a student of the academy, they tried to let him go, but he refused to leave. In the guy's thoughts, it was to subjugate this organization to himself. Later, thanks to the efforts of the prince and princess, he was found by the royal guard. Reinhard explained that his goal was unsuccessful. He also revealed that the initial task of the guild was the murder of Loyar, which was avoided. Then he made another recognition. He is not just a man. He is the son of a demon who was moved to another body. But this, as he said, is a lie. The real truth is that he is a writer who once created this world, died of a heart attack, and is now serving his punishment here. Ellen was shocked. The girl decided that the guy was mocking her. She got up and headed away, throwing, without turning around, the question is, how long he was going to sit still. Reinhard followed her. He was not surprised by her reaction. It was really difficult to believe in such a story.